And when the day is done, she's still holding on to the place she had when she was making light of you, making love to you. Now she's making light of love untrue. She's still walking every night, pacing streets in the moonlight. Moonshine smile on the young one, moonshine find me to fall upon. Make a path to find the lost one, make a way to watch me run. 'Cause she beats drums with the bud of a knife, carving rhythm in the twilight. If you find her, tell her what she likes, while she's stopped at the streetlight.
Hello, and welcome to Cetra's Angel Hood. Come on.
Streetlit stoplight, carry on with beat of a cut-up drum, gives you a tune to hum, making light of songs too soon to be sung.
Has your ego experienced death, which created a heart that is love? Do you believe in miracles from up above? Hello, my friend fellow, and welcome to this episode of Cetra's Angel Hood. We're living in the age of Aquarius, and we're going to touch on why people are so darn serious. While your mind may be a little curious, please feel free to be a bit delirious as we follow this harmonizing chorus, tantalizing that inner force. You can be anything you want to be, and you can create anything you desire to imagine. Your mind is the key, opening the heart to see, allowing the unity of both thought and deed. So here we're starting out with the Warrior of Swords. This deck is Egyptian in connotation and reference, though it goes back to being more so to the Rider-Waite deck, which is similar to a particular deck that was shown from the individuals involving this reading. Though here we have the Warrior of the Swords. It says, "Come, let me tell you how the Nektu-Ah goes to Syria and how he marches over the mountains." The Nektu-Ah, or strong-arm boys, were the hardcore open-order, hand-to-hand infantry of the pharaoh. They made up the bulk of the Egyptian military, with the best of the best being assigned to the Khint-Nesu, King's Braves, the elite special forces units of the ancient Egyptian army. The Warrior of Swords is dressed in the standard Nektu-Ah's armor, holding a shield and Kopesh sword. He steps into the conflict with his sword held high. He takes firm, solid steps. His dedication to purpose shows on his face. The pyramids stand in the background, representing the sturdiness of this tough, hardened veteran warrior, even as storm clouds begin to form in the background, indicating a rough road ahead. As it's in the beginning, I show it's in the reversed aspect, and in it being in the beginning, this may be current. I don't believe it's current in the very precise moment of doing this reading, this recording, I should say, of this reading, though this aspect may very well be the beginning, what you're working from or have worked from. And in this reverse meaning, it shows missed opportunities, restless, out of control, impulsive, dangerous, unfocused, burned out, disloyalty, lack of resolve, inconsistency, feeble footing. Now, not all of these words will apply. Some will be highlighted, so if you need to rewind and listen to that again. However, only what really sparks a connection in the words that were spoken there. So that's where we're starting from. Can very well be the past or recent present, I should say. Next, here, I'm going to come over here to Hanya Basatsu. And this one is on top of a few cards, so it plays an important role, and there's many supporting factors to this role. So we're going to keep coming back to this card a bit constantly here. So I know I'm going to mispronounce it, but I'm going to read the mantra here that goes along. It says, Om Dihihi Sri Shruta Vijay Svaha. I'm going to read the mantra that goes along with Hanya Basatsu. Om Dihihi Sri Shruta Vijay Svaha. The guardian of the Heart Sutra and Basatsu of divine wisdom. On here we see armor is upon the body, the arms there, the shoulders, upper shoulders, so forth. The Heart Sutra is what the hands are showing. The walls of difficulty are built by you. It says, give things that excite you precedence. Just open the door first. Strike a balance between seriousness and flexibility. The wisdom from Buddha here says you might be looking to try something new, but maybe that new thing is a little bit out of your range or experience. Of course, there is no guarantee that it will be easy, but if your heart feels strongly pulled towards this new endeavor, it would be a shame to give up just because it seems difficult. Don't shut the door on what could be an incredible opportunity to discover a whole new world. Instead, just begin by opening that door. If you walk through the door with sincerity and honesty in your heart, you will surely be welcomed with open arms. A deeper look. It mentions the 6 arms of Hanya Basatsu represent the 6 paramitas of Buddhism. His hand, representing the divine wisdom needed to reach enlightenment, holds the Heart Sutra. With this wisdom, many lesser Buddhas were able to attain enlightenment, becoming new Buddhas. Hanya Basatsu is one of the only Basatsu to appear wearing armor. This armor protects him from darkness and evil, and it represents your heart. Like the armor, your heart is ironclad in sound, allowing no darkness to penetrate as you continue in your spiritual journey. The blessings here is sound health and spiritual training. And so that's what we have. Everything you've been going through, all these difficulties, this is spiritual training. This is training for your emotional self, what I call the Kala Ana, the collection of our previously lived lives, all those emotions that come and rise within you. This is training. If you're not exposed to the chaos, you could never find balance. You can never find what you don't want to be. So you have found what you don't want and what you don't like, and so that allows you to pursue that spiritual training. All of it has been training. So don't regret or have shame or feel in any way that the past shouldn't be what it is, because it's helped you understand who you are today, and who you are is not the past. Who you are is everything you've been desiring. And that's exactly like this is saying in the aspect to, if you're feeling pulled towards something, giving things that excite you precedence, that bring you joy, follow that. Now that self, in order to truly have that self completely united, there's many aspects. I'm going to come up here first. It is the Six of Leaves here. This is a 15th century deck, a medieval fortune-telling deck. And the Six of Leaves brings out card indicating progress, movement. It invites you to avoid pointless efforts, not to waste energy. Energy shall be invaluable for improving the situation. Through commitment, you could earn a sought-after transfer, a promotion, and generally a better life. So, that spiritual training would certainly be supported here with that, with not wasting your energy. And how do you not waste your energy? Is it spending it on efforts that are going to create results that your past has shown you that you really don't want in your life. And so you can put your energy into resting, into healing. If you have time and ability, heal. Put that love that you've been giving to others to yourself. Value your heart. Value who you are. Cherish who you are in those pursuits where you find joy. And where you find joy in all these different aspects, that is you finding who you've always been in the new you as well, on that spiritual training course. The Eight of Scepters here is also a support. The Eight of Scepters brings out that it shows servants. Let me pick this up. Looking at the Eight of Scepters here. The Eight of Scepters brings out that the servants of the Pharaoh are racing to deliver 8 golden scepters to the royal palace. They appear to be in a competitive race with one another under the blue sky. The road is clear of any obstacles as they approach the finish line. Bordering their path is a cool, clear pond with sprouting vegetation and a date palm. But the dedicated servants ignore these pleasant distractions to fulfill their urgent mission. In this upright position, we have the meanings attached and associated, so what corresponds with yourself personally here. As mentioned, all words may not particularly hit a note, but the upright position brings out hastiness, action, momentum, energy, dedication, ignoring distractions, clear paths. And that would be a big portion of your ability to follow your intuition, because a lot of these ideas crop up to logically process, and for you, following the intuition has led to success in the past, and so you follow that. And this can show hastiness because action is happening, because there's momentum behind it. There's emotional energy that has a dedication to your higher self, to that all-saw self, to the indwelling intelligence, allowing you to ignore distractions and to stay on a clear path. And others with a logical mind can't follow this because you're operating on a quantum level, so they cannot logically connect how you're operating. However, how you are operating is technically logic, and that is how you're able to have success as you've had. Yes, obstacles along the route, though success nevertheless. And I would like to reiterate at this time how this card is underneath the Buddha card, if you will, of this deck. of the Hanya Basatsu, the guardian of the Heart Sutra. Give things that excite you precedence. Just open the door first. Strike a balance between seriousness and flexibility. So in this race that you have, that you're undergoing in life with others, if you will, because you have an objective and you're staying clear on the focused path, just open the door. It's some routes may seem like the door's closed, so you're just going to go another direction. Though if you open the door, you may have a very good opportunity to be able to strike a balance between seriousness and flexibility of recognizing, yes, I'm racing, but at the same moment, I need to take a moment to rest. I actually really do need to re-energize myself, and even if I lose this race to others, did I really lose the race? Did I not meet my objectives? Did I not complete the race in the first place? I mean, look around, who else is racing here? It's not everybody. So that's something to say in of itself. So this could be one of the, if you will, 6 arms of Hanya Basatsu here, representing divine wisdom needed to reach enlightenment. And especially that's being with the Heart Sutra. And so that wisdom along the race. Knowledge is one thing, but until that knowledge meets experience and can learn from that and become wisdom, that's a big different thing. Next, we're moving into the Ten of Scepters. This one is sitting on top of the Hanya Basatsu card. And so I guess when I see something underneath the card, I see supporting. When I see something on top of, that's something you can reach out and do, if you will. So moving on to the Ten of Scepters, something you can reach out and do through this intuition and through this all-sort of self of yours. This Ten of Scepters card features a servant of the Pharaoh carrying his lord's scepters across the desert. He is intent on his mission and is not distracted by the blue waters behind him, nor the fruitful date palms in the distance. He appears to be struggling to fulfill his mission, as some of his load is about to fall from his grasp. Yet the blessed rays of Aten reach down to him, offering him divine assistance, helping him lift and lightening his load. In this upright position, we have burden, obligation, responsibility, stress, hard work, struggle, divine intervention, spiritual help. So, in being able to reach out, you would reach out and experience burden and obligation and responsibility, because if you have a hand to be able to lighten somebody's burden or to lighten somebody's struggle or to help them in their obligations, you must first learn how to do such things yourself. And to do such things yourself means to simply experience them. And when we experience something, usually we experience, I can't say usually, but sometimes in events we experience the bad. We have to experience the bad to learn how to fix that, to learn how not to be that, and then we can actually receive the divine intervention, the spiritual help of how to overcome those things. And then since we know actually the emotional struggle and burden of such things, then we know the importance of being able to share the solution with others. So that can be a very real aspect in your path and what you've been through in dealing with, in this hard work, if you will, in your course, and the things we've talked about of experiencing and not necessarily remembering on that subject matter. So this next card that is technically connected here is the Hiru card, and before we get into Hiru card, the 8 of hearts is underneath that. So I even though Hiru is technically on top, kind of like covering up this other one, I see a full support. I see, because of the 8 of hearts, Hiru, that will, that inner will of the all-saw self, the true indwelling intelligence, that entity's will of yourself completely exists because of the 8 of hearts here. And the 8 of hearts is bringing out a strong woman who supports you, your mother, sister, spouse, or sincere friend. Card indicating serenity and cooperation. You can open up your heart without hesitation and be confident. And so this makes a lot of sense in our interactions, in the fact that in your relationship, I will say, and with anybody throughout your life, the fact that somebody else is supporting you, whether it be a friend, whether it be a sister, whether it be anybody, when you feel supported, you can create anything. You could do anything. You can accomplish anything. It doesn't matter. What's the goal? We'll figure it out, even if we don't know, and we'll do it. And when you don't have support, when you don't have somebody fueling that fire within you, truly with that need, with putting that love into you, that support, as this 8 of hearts is bringing out, then your will doesn't exist. It just completely implodes, and that is probably the moments when you're most vulnerable to attack. You know what I'm talking about. And so that is very important to your Hiru card. So pay attention to that aspect. Communicate that with whoever or anyone you're involved with, so that you can have that support, whether it be a significant other, whether it be an extended family member, whether it be a trusted friend, however it be. And when I say trusted friend, it's very important to be able to distinguish friend from foe, because even foe can pretend like they want to be friend, and all along they're gathering information to screw you over with. So I have some systems we can talk about on that. I don't exactly want to completely deviate, but one word I keep going back to is Jack Flecken. Pay attention, recognize someone's accomplishments, and then discern involvement. So pay attention to what people do, not what they say, to what they do, and then discern whether you want to be around that or not. And so you don't have to have conflict. You can simply separate, and you can always be respectful. Hey, how you doing? See ya. Pretty busy. Move on with your life, and no harm, no foul. The Hiru card here, we're going to get into for a little bit here. Yes. And I guess before I get into the Hiru card, really I would like to read this one because it's technically underneath even the 8 of hearts. Did not pick up on that. It's number 40. Kichi Joten. From the Esoteric Buddhism of Japan Oracle Cards. Kichi Joten. The mantra here is O Maha Sarahi Savaha, goddess with blessings of unlimited treasures and fortune. The Chintamani gem here is being held, it seems, and the wish-granting mudra is being expressed in the hand gesture. It expresses a relationship in which each of you provides good influences. Look to things of beauty, success in your personal and professional life, beware of hidden dangers. Like into where this card is going, because as the Eight of Hearts was expressing, so too this card is following right in along with needing, not needing, but having that assistance from others, and then all of these things such as unlimited treasures and fortune abounding. Moving on to the wisdom from Buddha as it is expressed in the book right now, it says, right now you have a heightened sense of aesthetic beauty and the ability to create things of beauty one after another. You are brilliant and gorgeous, but what's most attractive about you is your originality. While you are no stranger to being called weird or different, you are surrounded by people who are just as original and creative, and you each influence each other in positive ways to become even better. So don't hold back. Be your best weird self. However, don't be wary of the hidden dangers that sometimes lurk in times like these. It says, do be wary. If I mispronounce this, it says, however, do be wary of the hidden dangers that sometimes lurk in times like these. So it's very important to pay attention to your surroundings. One word I've mentioned before is asnael, and that means calculate. Instead of judging, calculate. So again, pay attention to your surroundings. When you notice a pattern of behavior happening, you can most likely calculate the future of somebody's behaviors, whether they're going to produce good results or bad results. So if you hang around stupid people, you will become stupid. If you hang around wise people, you will become wise. And so be picky of who and what you spend, who you spend your time around, and what you spend your time thinking and talking about. And it goes a deeper look. It says, from heaven above, a white elephant uses a bottle to shower humanity with treasures. Kichi-Jotun is said to control the rains and is able to pull what she needs from the Chintamani gem in her hand. Her partner is Tamotin. She has a little sister known as Koku-Aten, who is the polar opposite of Kichi-Jotun, and serves as the goddess of misfortune and disaster, as well as being the wife of Inmao, the lord of the underworld. Kichi-Jotun blesses us with unlimited treasures and fortune, but Koku-Aten is always lurking nearby, reminding us that fortune and disaster exist side by side. The blessings here are beauty, prosperity, and good fortune. And certainly that beauty that we have is not what people see. And the riches we have, which is the fortune, is not what people truly value. I say I'm rich. I believe I'm rich. But in material, in physical possession, in money, well, that's not what I'm talking about. When I say rich, that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about the other side, the connections, and so forth. So your concept of beauty, your concept of prosperity, your concept of good fortune can completely have a shift in a dynamic of what you truly see as the blessings that truly come from a partnership and a union when you're supported. And thus again, creating your will, creating the state of Hiru, your true indwelling intelligence, what it desires, and your ability to do it, and those around you to support, and in the same essence, you're fulfilling their dreams, not just yours. So, we're going to move on to Hiru next. So in all that we just covered, all of that supports and guides your will, Hiru. So that's going to be a lot of the information that we're going to go through here, which is quite a bit to cover. It says the sixth sphere of the tree of life, which is Hiru, is the most important of all the spheres. It is the faculty where the equilibrium of man's being is established. All references to the golden mean to be centered, of being in the world but not of it, refer to this sphere. When we consider the fact that the Supreme Being in its essential state has no other beings with which to interact, then we can understand why it must create the world, which is a diversification of its being. Life on earth, then, is a process in which unity governs the internal and higher levels of organization, and diversity governs the external and lower levels of expression. When our consciousness is established in the sixth sphere, we are able to maintain the equilibrium between the forces that unite us internally to the world and each other, and the forces that separate us externally. It also enables us to maintain the equilibrium between our higher true self and our lower personality that unevolved people mistake as their self-identity. There are many factors in the world that demand this ability. Most people are caught in the quandary of knowing, on one hand, that all men are integral parts of one whole, yet on the other hand, do not know how to acknowledge that oneness in action because of their need to defend themselves against others whose attitudes to life are in violation of the oneness of life. The sixth sphere intuits, it teaches from within. It teaches man how to accomplish this task in all of its manifestations. As most men have not yet completed their evolution, there cannot be total expression of unity amongst them. It is important to realize that people are not going to manifest behavior without the necessary intuitive guidance from their spirit. The shaping forces of unity in man's spirit, the fourth sphere and up, are still dormant. Their awakening and functioning are in mankind's evolutionary future. In the same manner, the way people live must reflect an equilibrium between their current level of growth and the spiritual goal they are seeking and are being pulled toward. More on this later. It's a question of genuinely acknowledging our limitations as a temporary point in our growth, as opposed to a finite and essential quality of our spirit. Accepting our temporary limitations within the process of growing toward our divine essential nature will keep us from such pitiful acts like those made by many who felt that their innate divine nature would protect them while picking up rattlesnakes or etc. On the other hand, it will keep us from defining ourselves around our failures in life. The failure to understand this principle of equilibrium is the reason for the erroneous beliefs held by many Aryanized yogis or Vedantins to the effect that life on earth is without merit, like the Western crass materialists who reject all that is not of the physical plane. Many yogis have erred, but in the opposite direction. Since many problems in the world can be traced to the absence of this faculty, it is safe to conclude that most people in the world have not yet evolved it. This next portion mentions that Set sends his agents to look for and kill the boy king. This symbolizes the antagonistic reaction of our animal spirit and lower intellect toward our efforts to alter our behavior pattern to reflect the values of our higher divine nature. Most people are comfortable with spiritual culture as long as it does not entail giving up their likes and dislikes, following a teacher, living in harmony with cycles, interacting with things in a purposeful manner, etc. This stage cannot be understood unless we adhere to the definition previously given regarding the true purpose of man's will. Freedom of choice, the exercise of the will, is not the freedom to chart the course of our destiny, but our ability to embrace truth, or the lower part of our being, the opinions or the emotions, to undertake actions that are in or out of harmony with the whole. So at this stage, when the will of man begins to make its presence felt, either as a result of spiritual instruction or the trance work of the previous stage, he often rebels against the higher values. There is a dichotomy between what he believes or understands and what he feels. Another aspect here is that Set sends his agents to look for and kill the boy king. Says this symbolizes the typical reaction of conquerors and oppressors to those who revolt against their immoral rule. So I will simply state, according to some conversations we've had already on the subject, you're definitely, if you will, as I've mentioned, a king, and certainly agents have been sent out to stop and seize you from accomplishing that which is your true identity, your true purpose, your true nature, which opposes certainly the mass way of the world and society at hand. The next aspect here is level 2, stage 4 of initiation, the Ab division, the heart division of the spirit, sphere 6, Heru. Says the initiation at this stage aims at teaching the initiate to establish his will as the master of his behavior. It is amazing that so much ink has flowed in regards to the will, yet so little is known about it. Willing is an action of the self and not of the person. When we will, we are involved in the action of setting into motion functions of the spirit or the body from the level of the self. Actions that are set into motion from the level of the person are acts of desiring, wishing, hoping, etc. The fundamental difference is that the will originates from the self, which is unswayed by emotions and sensuousness, while desiring is influenced and dictated by them. This is cleverly embedded in the All-Syrian story. Allset mates with the deceased Al-Saud and conceives Heru. Het Heru carries him in her womb and gives birth to him. It is a grand metaphor for the union through trance of one's identity with the indwelling self. Allset mates with Al-Saud, and the empowerment of this identity through the spiritual power intensification rituals in stage 3, Het Heru, which gives birth to the personal will, Heru. It is important to keep in mind that a goal of initiation is to attain to the point where one is able to set the so-called subconscious, the spirit, or involuntary functions into motion at will. Not only does the indwelling intelligence control the involuntary functions of the body, it also controls all phases of our behavior, and is the major shaping force of everything that happens in our lives. In example, it influences the course of our career, marriage, safety, and so on to our destiny. As the chief director of the spirit or the subconscious, Al-Saud is free of emotional influences. So must be the will, which it gives rise to. This is to say that the will is the child of the self, as desire is born of the person. The initiate also learns that the freedom of his personal will is not for the purpose of choosing and determining the various undertakings in his life, careers, marriage, etc. Such a concept must be alarming to Westerners, whites and blacks, if you will, without understanding into more ways of others. But Africans have a long-standing tradition of consulting oracles in such matters to discover if the want is in harmony with the divine will, and if it is, which part of the spirit, as symbolized by a deity, is in control of the undertaking. This subject raises the question regarding predestination in people's lives, as this is a false concept we need not entertain. The practice of consulting an oracle to see if the proposed undertaking is in harmony with the divine will is based on the fact that, like all intelligent undertakings, all lives are planned. Do you plan before you undertake something important? Do you believe that your life is a haphazard, hence accidental sequence of events? Where there is no planning, there is no intelligence. The plan of each person's life is revealed by the second division of their spirit. This plan and parts of it can be made known through such oracles as Ifa, Afa, Dilogon, I Ching, the Metu Neter, the oracle revealed in this book, by initiates who have awakened their second sphere, Tahuti faculty, and in some cases by mediums. What then is the function of the personal will? The function of man's will is to allow him the freedom to choose between good and evil. What is good and what is evil? We go to the tree of life for our answer. The first and highest manifestation of divinity, or sphere 1, is the unity of all opposites, which is the good. The lowest manifestation, the 10th sphere, is the source of our emotional behavior, which makes our life irrational if we allowed it control over our lives. This is the evil. Hiru's job, the will, is to keep the lower part of being, emotions, and the sahu from directing our lives in deference to the higher. Beyond the importance of ensuring that all of our undertakings are in harmony with each other, the use of oracles involves the set of one of the most important rituals in our lives. In many cases, we find that the direction of the oracle is at odds with our desires and conditionings. Complying with the oracular pronouncement in most such cases involves the individual in a pitched battle against the lower part of being. This is the manner in which the deities, metaphysical intelligences, reveal to us which conditionings are to be overcome in relation to a specific undertaking. In example, we are informed of the spiritual significance of a specific worldly undertaking. A person might be told by the oracle that in order to succeed in the marriage, rituals must be done to Sebek. It means that this person's marriage is a vehicle for the development of this spiritual faculty. A set of key oracular readings serves to map out a fully personalized spiritual curriculum for the individual, while the success in carrying out the directions provides an objective way of measuring the degree of spiritual development. Anyone who has tried to measure objectively and accurately his or her spiritual progress will be able to appreciate this fully. The ecstatic trance rituals performed in the preceding stage and certain breathing practices introduced in this stage result in the awakening of the initiate. A chief distinction between the states of sleep and wakefulness is that in sleep our will does not function, while it does when we are awake. And since most people are for the most part unable to successfully use their will, we are justified in concluding that they are not fully awake during their waking state. A waking trance induction method is therefore introduced at this stage. It is based on a special way of breathing that is characterized by the decrease of the rate of breathing and the increase of the volume of air breathed in. This method of breathing, which is called dumo or getumo, fire breathing, leads to a state of wakefulness that is many times more intense than normal. The waking trance, opposite to mediumistic or hypnotic trance, is the subject of one of the greatest books ever to come out of Kemet, known as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, a name given it by Arab grave robbers because they found copies of the book buried with the corpses. It is really the Pert Im Heru, becoming a book of becoming awake. Pert Im means becoming, and Heru means day or sun, and by extension, the day consciousness, wakefulness. In the state of trance, the senses are fully asleep. There is little to no awareness of the external world or the body, while the person is in a state of full mental wakefulness. The wakefulness enables the mediator to see the falsehoods and contradictions in the beliefs that were cultivated in the early part of life. Related to the initiation at this stage is the beginning of a spiritual responsibility that serves as the determinant of the effectuation of spiritual growth. In other words, when do we know that the living truth has led to spiritual growth? Can you say that growth takes place when the observance of a virtue does not involve a challenge? While exercising at a heart rate of 140 beats per minute, signals improvement for someone whose peak exercising rate was lower. It does not for someone already there or beyond. Similarly, spiritual growth only takes place when we are challenged to embrace a truth or directive of the oracle, the wisdom part of our spirit, and it runs into opposition from our conditioning. Your mind is set on doing something, and the oracle or spiritual law reveals to you that you will achieve your goal at the expense of someone else. Doing the right thing will, from the narrow view, cause you losses. These types of scenarios, which are called crossroads situations, have given rise to the belief that the best place to make offerings and do rituals are at crossroads. Success in the living of truth at such crucial moments is made possible by the Heru, or the sexual power that is generated in the gonads, the house, the het of sex, /Heru, and a great meditation system entitled Min Ab Im Ankh Im Mahat. We will detail it in future chapters and in future discussions here. In conclusion, it must be noted that the opposition to the living of truth by our conditionings demands that we summon extra spiritual power. Spiritual power, Kundalini, Ra, can only be aroused to its greatest heights by the genuine challenges in life. Thus it takes power to get power. It is hoped that the reader will begin to understand that discipline cannot be achieved by meditating on the abstraction discipline. All sermons to such effects or hypnotic auto-suggestions like I am disciplined, etc. must fail. So these, as I was mentioning, are new habits, new ways that have to come into your life of being. The continued invocation, perhaps if you start going over the invocation for Allset as well, can help in this. Much of this I've covered, and as it's been recorded and shared, you can definitely review and go back. Here in 6, continuing into the Metaphorion of Al-Sad and the spiritual evolution of society. We have here that Set sends his agents to look for and kill the boy king. This symbolizes the typical reaction of conquerors and oppressors to those who revolt against their immoral rule. So here we have the components of a meditation. The fourth set of meditations, the sixth sphere, aims at going into waking trance in order to oppose the conditionings that are opposed to the goal that we are seeking to achieve. We may find it necessary to repeat the first set of meditations once more again. The reason for this could be given later. And the first set of meditations involves going into a mediumistic trance with the objective of identifying with Al-Sad, for it is only through this action that we can lay the foundation for transcending our conditionings. We have already seen the importance of this procedure. So I'd like to highlight here that, and we're going to touch more on this later, is the waking trance state. For you to be awake, conscious, and yet in a trance, in a meditation in which you are accessing memories that have previously been, memories that have previously been blocked to you. So, I'm going to move on here. We have level 2 of the meditation process, stage 4, sphere 6. States, this stage corresponds to a set of meditations revolving around man's will. It was said earlier that for an indication of an expected accomplishment to be considered an act of the will, it must be free of emotional or sensuous influence. Otherwise, it is a desire. Since all personalities are indissolubly tied in with emotions, only those expectations arising from an identification with the indwelling intelligence can be considered willed events. There can be no such thing as a free will where the individual's choices are dictated by emotional or sensuous compulsion. It is important to note that the failure to distinguish between willing and desiring is a major cause of the failure to grow spiritually, for we fail to transcend our emotionality when we avoid an emotional act because of another emotion. This is the reason for Hiru's initial failure to defeat Set. So, before I continue reading on, I'd like to point out on that very last point, talking about transcending our emotionality when we avoid an emotional act because of another emotion. So, in a pure example way, I go downstairs, I want to go to the refrigerator and get something out to drink. This was just a compulsion, a willed event of mine to do. So I go downstairs, and then all of a sudden, someone downstairs I don't like is there, and so instead of walking just even past them and saying hello and getting what I want, I decide to just come back upstairs to my room, and I don't get my drink. So it changes what I watch, because now I'm in a frustrated mood. So now instead of watching the comedy program I was planning on watching, now I'm watching something more action, more violent, more raw. And so I'm upset ultimately because I'm not drinking my drink. So one emotional event affected my other emotions, which was a preconditioned disposure to be passive and not even deal with the situation in the present with them at all, but to just keep it to myself. So I came back upstairs and I'm dealing with all of this. So to get to the All-Star selves means I am who I truly am. I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to get my drink, I'm going to say hello, whatever. I ignore them. However I'm feeling, whatever my All-Star true indwelling self is that's who I am. And I get my drink, I come back, I watch a comedy program, I have my drink, I don't think twice anymore about the situation. So he goes on stating, we must also recall that the true purpose of our will is not for choosing the path of our destiny, which is determined in the spiritual realm before incarnation. This is why competent astrologers can read a person's destiny from their charts. In most traditional African societies, it is a common practice for the character and destiny of an individual to be revealed by diviners shortly after birth. The goddess of destiny, for example, accompanies Tahuti when he makes his appearance at the individual's birth. This can be viewed from another perspective. Every person's destiny is under the control and direction of the indwelling intelligence. The true purpose of the will is to ensure that the thoughts, feelings, and actions that we undertake are in harmony with the plan of our indwelling intelligence. All truly successful people who have not been guided by diviners manage to intuitively or instinctively discover their career or destiny objective is determined by their true self. Unfortunately, they are in the minority. Most people must discover their earthly mission from their indwelling intelligence through the use of oracles or in-depth meditation. In most cases, the effort to live according to the dictates of the self, which are based on divine law, brings us into opposition with the emotionally dominated personality. These crises, which are intensified by life force arousal procedures, are symbolized in the Osirian Metaphorian by the battle between Heru and Set, and in other traditions they are the crossroads, which are the chief places for conducting rituals and making offerings to God. These spiritual crises are the most important events in our spiritual development. They are the only events that mark our spiritual growth. It is of utmost importance to understand that spiritual growth does not take place from the studying of scriptures, spiritual literature, doing rituals, or meditating, deity, or even ancestor possession, etc. These are merely means of preparing you to live truth at the crossroad. And if you don't remember, crossroad meaning two places are intersecting, so you have a truth coming to you, you have something you're emotionally stuck at, and so you have a place of conflict within you. Your emotions are heightened, your vibration, your frequency is rising, and you have a chance to connect with more than you're usually connected with because of this emotional excitement that is being caused by truth and desire, if you will. Unfortunately, about 97% of students of spirituality do not know this truth. They pick and choose when and where they will observe a spiritual teaching, oblivious to the fact that spirituality is the living of truth. Each and every time that one finds oneself in a situation of having to choose between the laws of the higher parts of being against our feelings and opinions regarding the situation. Crossroads situations have very marked characteristics. On the side of the lower part of the being, we experience strong emotions and realizations to the effect that we will suffer irreparable harm if we give in to the truth or ignore the emotions. A person who is endeavoring to transcend selfishness will find himself or herself in a critical situation, not of their choosing, in which they are called upon by the circumstances to share with their worst enemy or to be nice with a most obnoxious person who has humiliated them, and so on. It is then that Sebek, his faculty of rationalization, will provide them with a very clever, yet transparent, excuses for not living truth. A careful and objective examination of these rationalizations will reveal that they are made up of all sorts of half-truths and are out and out and out double-talk, fork-tongued. Good examples can be found in the arguments given by the American government for subsidizing tobacco growers while banning tobacco ads from the airwaves. It is only when we transcend the dominance that our emotional and sensual vehicle exerts upon us that spiritual growth takes place. This is easier said than done, as we all very well know from the trouble that most people encounter in dealing with their bad habits and emotions. Yet, with the proper meditation technique and spiritual education, it is much easier than is generally believed. I'm going to read the Min Ab Em Ankh Em Mahat portion here so that you can be familiar, because that was mentioned earlier, and this is something you should be very well aware of in going forward with being able to enter that waking trance on more of a regular basis at more of an easier capability than necessarily setting up particular methods for harmonizing what I would deem a proper ritual would be. So Min Ab Em Ankh Em Mahat, the meditation technique for transcending the emotions, was called Min Ab Em Ankh Em Mahat. Keeping the heart stable to live truth is what that means in the Comedian tradition. The Satipatthana, right or stable mindfulness in esoteric Buddhism. Contrary to popular opinion, the way to successfully deal with emotions is not by controlling them, but by ignoring them. This is the essence, not only for establishing the dominion of the will, but as we will later see, for the experiencing of ourself as the indwelling intelligence. What would happen if you did not obey an emotion or a sensual craving? Nothing. This thought seems not to have occurred to most people who believe that they must follow their feelings and that their feelings are the validators of their will and their actions. An example, that unless they have a feeling for doing something, they cannot do it, or that the action is not genuine, and so forth. Most people succumb to this delusion, even though they have already overcome a habit, smoking, alcohol, meat eating, etc., that should have taught them once and for all the truth. The day you made up your mind to give up a habit, the craving did not stop. You succeeded by ignoring the craving and following your knowledge of the facts, even though the latter lacked power to generate feelings of pleasure. In fact, the pleasure was with the habit you were seeking to transcend. Essentially, the Min Ab meditation process is a practice of ignoring the thoughts, sensations, and emotions that motivate you to think, give attention to feelings, and act in opposition to what the truth of the situation demands. A person, for example, experiences emotions that pressure him to withdraw and to dwell on feelings and thoughts of insecurity and inferiority. Whenever his wife declines to become intimate, or whether she is justified or not. The Min Ab meditation will consist of 1. Ignoring such thoughts and making every effort to act in a contrary manner. 2. As you will most likely be visited by a. Thoughts of guilt and recrimination for harboring the negative thoughts and feelings, you must also ignore this set of thoughts and emotions as well. You may also experience a sense of anguish manifesting as an intolerance of the sensations of oppression associated with the emotion of guilt. Rather than slowing yourself to get caught up in hoping to be free of these sensations and doing things to expedite the deliverance from them, you must learn to accept their presence. In time, the emotions will cease to visit you as long as you persevere in the above meditation procedure. The invocation of Alset can help work in these instances as well. Incidentally, it must be noted that this meditation technique is practiced not sitting in a quiet place, but in the thick of our everyday life experiences. It aims at giving us expertise in the management of our thoughts, emotions, and states of consciousness. The governing principle of Min Ab is that there is never a reason for an emotional reaction. In other words, the tie between an emotion and what prompts it is not a rational one. It is based on the law of association, which was well explained by the Russian psychologist Pavlov. He would ring a bell each time he fed his dogs. Eventually, the ringing of the bell would by itself elicit the salivation and flow of digestive juices, as if the food had also been presented to the dogs. The spirit could not tell the difference between the bell and the food. All of our emotional and sensual responses are based on this non-rational associative mechanism. As man's spirit is originally and essentially free of emotional conditioned reflexes, all emotions are superimpositions on her true nature. Must you become angry in order to defend yourself? Have not thousands of years of Oriental martial arts practice proven that the calmer the warrior, the better is his performance? Are animal faces, screaming, tense of the body, and shouting obscenities necessary for expressing one's dissatisfaction? Don't they reduce the clarity of our communication of displeasure? What about suppression? Some people may ask. They may argue that the Min-Ob technique involves suppression of the emotions and sensual needs and may therefore be harmful. It is best to let it out, some will argue, ignoring the catastrophic results in many cases. Murders, broken marriages, high blood pressure, etc. We must return once more to the truth concerning the original and essential nature of man's spirit. It is free of all emotional and sensuous conditioning. This is what enables us to remove the pained, conditioned reflex through suggestions given in trance to allow surgical procedures to be done without anesthetics. The pain mechanism is a protective condition, hence a conditioned reflex imposed upon the organism due to the slowness and corruptibility of the voluntary thought mechanism. If the removal of a part of our physical organism from a harmful source depended on our thinking, we would be in a great deal of trouble. Most people freeze up in threatening situations. Thus, the indwelling intelligence has programmed or conditioned the spirit to react automatically to threatening situations. When, however, we know that we must subject the organism to pain, as with surgery, parturition, or labor, etc., we can remove the superimposed pain reflexes. This fight or flight mechanism is very primitive. It has its centers in the portion of our brain which is dominant in the life of animals and influences us to animalistic behavior. Failing to distinguish between real, imagined, and interpreted threats, it automatically prepares us to fight or flee whenever we believe that we are threatened. If we keep our minds on the fact that the successes experienced by people in overcoming their habits of smoking, alcoholism, or etc., was due to the fact that the cravings and emotional drives to indulge eventually disappeared as a result of their being consistently ignored, then there was no suppression at work. In fact, the avoidance of the possibility of suppression is the aim of the second practice of the Min-Ob meditation system. Let's return to our gentleman above, who is visited by emotions pressuring him to withdraw and indulge the thoughts of insecurity whenever their wife says to them, "No, honey, not tonight. I don't feel like it." He has read up to the last paragraph and tells the author, "Okay, I'm with you. I realize that my spirit is originally and essentially unconditioned. Therefore, these emotions are not who I am. I've been ignoring the pressure to withdraw and to dwell on thoughts of self-worthlessness, etc. But the fact is that, even though I make the effort to interact in a normal way with my wife at such moments, I nevertheless feel terrible. The feelings and the thoughts are still there in the background. I really want them to go away." We can all identify with our gentleman friend. Again, the answer is the same. Ignore this second thought of thoughts and emotions, for the simple fact that our spirit is essentially and originally free of emotional conditionings, and the aim of spiritual development is the removal of the emotional superimpositions on the spirit. In other words, armed with the knowledge that our true nature is lacking in intrinsic emotional programs, we make the effort to ignore the conditioned reflexes, pressuring us to accept the thought that we cannot stand the sensations accompanying our emotions. Ignoring these thoughts is not merely our inattention to them. We must not seek ways to rid ourselves of the feeling, nor indulge the thoughts to the effect of wishing that the feeling would soon go away. I will be glad when I stop feeling this way, or so forth. Nor indulge the thoughts that we are unvirtuous, immature, or unspiritual for having such emotions. We must remember that all emotions and sensual cravings are expressions of the lower part of our being, the person, and not ourself, the indwelling intelligence. Identification with ourself, the all-sought self, involves non-identification with our emotions. And before I proceed forward, the non-identification with our emotions, we have spoken on this reading about a oneness with others. And in general, we speak with others about a oneness. In any case, the oneness that we truly all do share is emotions. We all feel the greatest of pains, and we all feel the hardest of lows. Some have experienced the experience to feel such things, and some have not. Though the experience does not have to be equal to somebody's experience to feel the same emotion. Therefore, for me, in my very beginning of my journey, was the realization that we all feel the same. We each feel like our feelings are the worst or the greatest, though they're the same. And that is what we all truly share in common, as well as consciousness. So these emotions and losing one's connection of identifying with their emotions, in all reality, in losing that personal identification, you see the larger identification. If you go through a sad moment, know that that's expounded by billions. I wanted to say millions, but billions, if not more, of people who are also experiencing this. You're not alone. Many others are feeling this way. So connect with others, and then when you connect with others, you seek to want a solution. When you want a solution, then you have to change yourself. And when you change yourself, you become yourself. When you become your true all-sought self, your true indwelling intelligence, well then of course you start changing everyone around you. And when I say you start changing people, it's not that you're trying to, but just you being you encourages others to be them, and thus they develop. And development is change, it's growth, it's just that. Alright, here. Goes on, it says, it is interesting to note that while Western man identifies his emotions as the expressions of his self, in the Kemetic tradition they are identified with the animal part of our being. The latter is kept uppermost in the understanding of the people through the widespread symbolization of human nature as animal-headed people or human-headed animals. Ergo, the deities Heru, Set, Anpu, or etc. This allows us to keep our emotions in their proper place, instead of elevating them, and thus giving them power over our lives, as Westerners have done. What are emotions anyhow? In all the behaviors so labeled, we will discover that they involve a response in which we become tense, especially in our breathing, which gets restrained and focused in the upper chest region at the point beneath the at the point beneath the sternum, that is. Because of this, Our breathing is shallow, less than 500 milliliters, and irregular. Stuck in this tense, shallow, and irregular breathing state, we are thrown into a negative trance with the belief that one, some external situation or agent is the cause of our sensation. We give it a meaningless label, anger or shyness or fear, and that we must follow the behavior suggested by the thought component of our emotion. As emotions occur at the junction of the 9th and 10th spheres, the trance that is experienced is of the mediumistic modality, which means that the will becomes inactive. A characteristic of the mediumistic trance is that the contents of the sphere of awareness are accepted as reality. This is how emotions exert their power over people's lives. This insight into emotions, that they are mediumistic trances, accompanied with tense abnormal breathing, painful as well as pleasurable, gives us the clue for disarming their power to compel us, 1, to do not dwell on the thoughts that accompany them, and 2, to focus your attention on each spot where you feel tense, and will your body to relax itself. Regulate and harmonize your breathing by taking it deep, slow, and rhythmic. That was 3. And then 4, if applicable, do just the opposite of what the thought accompanying the feeling was suggesting. Make a strong effort to carry out the last instruction. When a powerful emotion threatens to overwhelm us, at step number 3, we can zap it forcibly by pulling the lower abdomen in and up. Lift the upper chest and hold it as you breathe out. Make sure that the lower abdomen is the only place in the body where tension is felt. This cannot be overstated. Follow this out-breath by expanding the lower abdomen as you breathe in. At the end of the in-breath, tense the lower abdomen and hold the breath. Repeat the cycle starting with the forcible contraction as explained above. Do this for as long as is needed to diffuse the emotion. It should not require many repetitions. Its effectiveness is due to the fact that the forcible contraction of the lower abdomen applies pressure on the pneumogastric nerve, which stabilizes the activity of the heart and sends a reflex stimulus to the waking center of the brain, the R complex, and the cerebral cortex. This manipulation of the nervous system serves to awaken the person from the mediumistic trance of emotion, as it is the basis for inducing waking trance. You need to be in a state of waking trance. So, just remember, if you can't really process everything I'm speaking, and those around you can probably help you process this a lot better than even I've been able to process it. But one thing that I know is important is lifting up the chest, and when you do that, you're really breathing in here, and there's a point where there's a smoothness of your tensity, because if you apply the pressure here, like it mentioned, it affects the heart up here, which jumps up and affects the brain up here, which affects something else, another part of the brain, and you technically have 4 brains. I just want to throw out there. Your gut is a brain, and this brain up here is a composition of 3 brains. Anyways, without getting lost in the detail of that. Oh shoot, it stopped recording. Oh, sorry. Though the importance of all of that is just remember to have good posture. Have good posture. Bring in your gut. Work those muscles down here. Tighten them up. And when you do that, you'll remember your breathing will start changing, and do what's natural, do what's comfortable, create a flow, and if you can, go back and listen to that and follow that guidance And that is a very good breathing technique. You don't need anything else other than to affect your breathing, and it will change what you're thinking about. It will help you stay on track of your true all-saw, true indwelling intelligence. Another important goal of the Min-Ob meditation system is the sharpening of mindfulness. How many times haven't you said to yourself that you will not indulge a particular habit, only to find yourself knee-deep in the act before you remembered your pledge? A simple, yet very effective technique consists in taking away something that you like very much from yourself for each infraction. Another extremely useful exercise that is a must consists in going for several days without laughing or smiling. Because these emotions are so powerful, the ability to ignore them gives the individual a great deal of skill in handling the negative ones. Before I read the last paragraph here, I want to state that fasting is something important. And when I say fasting, I don't just mean food. I mean from everything. If you like sodas, fast from sodas for a bit. If you like broccoli, fast from broccoli for a bit. Whatever your true likes are that you do on a regular basis are, start fasting from them. Start for a day, take it up to a week. You know that you're not giving this up. You're not quitting it for good, but you're showing yourself that you can control that which you desire. And so then this expands into many other ways, like it's saying to go several days without laughing or smiling, because you are learning to control these. Now, far down the line, when you become a master, this controlling aspect will no longer happen. This is only, if you will, training wheels, so that you have mastery to pull yourself back to your indwelling intelligence. And if you have control, then things don't go too far. As you've probably experienced and attempted in life, you know how to push things to the extreme. Too much, very easy to do. Too little, takes a little bit more effort, but you can get there pretty decently. Finding that sweet spot and holding that sweet spot is now where your life has come to bring you, to take you to that lesson. You're ready for that. You can become that. When you do, your life is going to smooth out beautifully. The last paragraph here goes on, and it mentions, beyond the issue of emotional transcendence, the practice of ignoring our emotions strengthens our awareness of the duality of our nature. Through the Min-Ob meditation, we have repeated experiences of the fact that on one hand, there is a part of our being saying, I will not allow my body to follow the impulses to laugh or cry or so forth, while there is another part that is generating these impulses independent of our will and consciousness. This is the objective. Reality behind the term individual is indivisible duality. So, in this meditation process, in this breathing exercise, I shouldn't even call it a meditation process, in this breathing exercise, you are increasing oxygen into your body. And when you increase oxygen into your body, it's almost like getting high. And the reason why I say that is because we're all suffocating from a lack of oxygen. The air around us is polluted everywhere. The environments of our regular breathing patterns have encouraged us to pull in a small amount of oxygen. And so in these breathing techniques that are primarily changing and affecting your brain to think differently, it's also increasing the oxygen in your body. And when you do that, there's a whole bunch of people probably around you that know a whole lot on the subject, but I know that it increases the body's ability to operate. More oxygen, way more better for the body. So the next area here is bringing out that there are a great deal of misunderstandings that have gained permanence in the thinking of the majority of Egyptologists. Leading these is the popular misconception that Heru is the sun god. It is damaging on two counts. For one, it is a perversion of the true meaning of the deity, and for another, it perpetrates the slur that African people worship material things, the sun, or rivers, or lakes, or animals, and so forth. In a qualified sense, we can say that the sun is used as a metaphor to lead thinking to the understanding of the set of phenomena under the control of the natural force labeled Heru. Specific to our present consideration is the division of the human metabolism into two phases. One is characterized by the rise of bodily temperature, and the other by its decrease. Each phase has its set of temperature or temperament, dependent or related physiological and psychical functions. Those that are directly related and dependent on the rise in temperature above the mean can be metaphorized as solar, the very extreme stages, as Marshall. The opposite phase is assigned to the Moon, Mercury, and Saturn. The mean between the two extremes is assigned to Venus and Jupiter. Heru corresponds therefore to the solar phase of the psychophysical metabolic cycle, which is mediated by non-adrenaline. Heru corresponds therefore to the solar phase of the psychophysical metabolic cycle, which is mediated by non-adrenaline and other chemicals of the sympathetic nervous system. It enables us to become and remain awake, per Heru, to externalize our focus of consciousness, to reason, pay attention, to carry out our will, to utilize the organs and faculties of external activity, the eyes, the frontal part of the cerebrum, the hands, legs, etc. Heru corresponds to our will, which is the freedom to follow or reject divine law, and our emotions. This freedom is the crux of our divinity. Without it, man would be compelled to follow the structural shaping forces of order which manifest in the 10th sphere as the instincts that compel all other creatures to obey the law, in which case he could not be held accountable to law, human or divine, let alone be considered the likeness of God. Hence, spiritual growth occurs only when behavior and actions are initiated independent of emotional impulses. An example, one ignores them. Many people are ignorant of the intrinsic freedom of their will, or are so habituated to acting out of emotional impulsion or seeming compulsion that they voluntarily renounce their intrinsic mastery over their spirit. This defaulting to the emotions is represented by Heru Kentai Mahati, or Heru the Blind. The other common misconception about the will is the belief that power is an attribute of it. The ability to achieve one's will is therefore spoken of as strength of will, etc. But the very factors that make the will intrinsically free of emotional, the power part of our being, free of emotional influence, also denies it of power as its attribute. A major correspondence of Heru, or the sun, is the king and all people in authority. His function is to command the people and the army to carry out works. He does not have the power to do it himself. Similarly, when we declare our will to achieve a goal or carry out a behavior, we are commanding another part of our being which possesses the attributes of power. This is Ra, our life force. It is of interest to note that the symbol of Ra is a serpent surmounting the solar disk, and all of its creative functions are carried out through the agency of Hekal, or the words of power. We should not be surprised that the most primitive, hence most powerful part of our brain, the reptilian brain or R complex, is responsive to sound waves and rhythm and not ideas. Perhaps someday perhaps one day Western psychologists will realize that this part of the brain is the doorway to the root-shaping factors of our behavior, as well as the powers of nature. The supreme way, then, of willing events is through the chanting of the Hekal, the words of power, controlling the physical manifestation. This manner of declaring our will is symbolized by Hiru Pakat, or Hippocrates, or Hiru the child. He is depicted emerging from a lotus wearing the red and white crown, holding the flail and crook in one hand, while making the sign of silence and of chanting the Hekal. The lotus, which is a flower that requires a great deal of sunlight, it closes with the setting of the sun and opens with its rising, is a symbol of the psychic centers, or the chakras, wherein manifest the forces represented by the words of power. The sign of silence and chanting Hekal, which is made by pointing the index finger to the mouth, symbolizes chanting combined with the cessation of ideation as the supreme means of expressing the will. Our willingness to carry out our will, as we all know so well, depends greatly on our state of vitality. Hiru is assisted in his work of protecting the work of Assad on our behalf by his 4 children, Hapi, who represents a northern force and protects the small viscera of the body, Tuamutef, representing the eastern and protecting the heart and the lungs, Amset, representing the southern and protecting the stomach and large intestines, and Krebesanuf, representing the western and protects the liver and the gallbladder. There is more than just mere symbolism at work here, but the heart of the teaching is that by observing order, regularity, and the cycles governing the body's functions, the health of the vital organs were ensured, and thus the vitality. It is thus that we secure and preserve the ability to maintain the clarity of mind that is necessary for the practice of Menab, and the sense of vitality that supports our willingness to carry out our will. Compare this with the common belief even among psychologists and mind power experts that willpower is developed through mental exercises. So these are some fundamental principles, or the shaping factors of life and their interrelation and interdependence. And while there is a lot more I would like to share, I'm going to stay on point with the Hiru here aspect of the card reading. The first portion says the possession of our will, or the freedom to follow or reject divine law, is the basis of our divinity. It is the one thing that clearly separates man from all other creatures on earth. It is the only free element in man's being. This brings us to one of the most important, if not the most important, principle governing spiritual realization. While heaven, the spheres 0 through 3, and earth, spheres 7 through 10, seek to coerce us to follow its mandates through structures and impulses respectively, Living according to the principle governing the will is characterized by actions taken free of emotional coercion from below or structural impositions from above. This is so important as most students of spirituality so dependent on and habituated to acting from emotional compulsion waste their opportunities for spiritual development, waiting and hoping for an impulse from above to force them to live truth. But how can we attain to freedom without effort? And how can we make the effort if there is no freedom? Yes, no freedom, no effort, and no effort, no freedom. The next portion is bringing out shaping factors of success. And here, an enlightened Heru knows that all actions and undertakings must begin in the freedom from emotional influences. Ultimately, no sane person is ever compelled to act. He is either ignorant of his intrinsic freedom to choose to follow or reject the impulses from the animal part of the spirit, the sensual, cravings and emotions, that is, or he chooses not to follow the law of heaven, of Mahat, which is always applied to him with the gentleness of a feather. He therefore enlightens himself regarding the true nature and purpose of the will, and the means of effectively using the Menab, the science of using the will to secure one's goal by allowing the higher values to lead over the emotional forces. In a mundane understanding of Heru, it is the ability to understand the abstract and concrete unifying and separating functions of all spheres and their coordination for the carrying out of the undertaking. If you are deficient in these abilities, you must seek the assistance of one who meets the criteria, as these qualities are cultivated through supervisory and leadership positions. The people who could best assist you are those who are successful in the roles of supervisors, heads of household, bosses, kings, presidents, etc. In all cases, whether you are capable or not, your success depends on receiving counsel from someone above you. It is important then to cultivate respect for elders, authorities, and masters in particular fields or of life matters, sages. Meditating on the Heka of Heru will attract such persons to you and assist you in establishing the mode of being receptive to higher counsel, yet maintaining the freedom to make your own decisions. This receptivity differs from all sets in the sense that she follows without questioning or going through a decision process. A note here is that it is important to note that the key, the mental ability functioning through spheres 4, 5, and 6, is understanding literally to stand under. It corresponds to the ability to go into waking trance and perceive the abstract principles governing specifics, separating them and unifying them. If you receive any of these Matutu in a reading and you lack the information, abstract blueprint, the mandala, the cosmogram, or whatnot, or the ability to think abstractly, you must seek counsel from one who meets the criteria. We could always talk more on that if you need to. I think you got a good handle on that, but invitation is open there. Next, we have the shaping factors of failure. Failure is not just simply or always the inability to achieve a mundane undertaking. Whether we achieve a mundane goal or not, we fail if we have jeopardized our spirituality thereby. Central to failing is the negative state of the will, which is characterized by either the ignorance of the principles governing the will or the unwillingness to follow them. Most people are ignorant of the fact that they are essentially free to ignore all emotional and sensual impulses and are thus controlled by them by default. Others pathetically learn of their essential freedom of will and even of the excellent means of effectively using it, the Menab, but choose to follow these impulses just the same. The following principles, which result from a negative state of the Hiru, contribute individually or together to failure in undertakings or in life. In summary here of Hiru, or I should say, yes, in summary of Hiru, it is the will is the source of the self, the Asar, the unemotionally initiated. So the will is the source of self-initiated acts. So unemotionally attached, Hiru is able to perform self-initiated acts without being emotionally compromised or influenced. You know the objective, and that's what you go for. It's a mission. It's no longer I'm choosing this because I want to do that. We don't have time to diddle-daddle anymore. The stage is set, the battle is, and I'm not talking about any physical battle here to anybody listening. I'm talking about the mental and the emotional battle for the sanity of our species altogether, really. Next, we have the Tree of Life Guide to Planning aspect. States, you have now arrived at the transitional point, the crossroad. You must firmly keep in mind your readiness to run your project and not let it run you. The work of the lower spheres must keep to the specifications of the spheres above. It is so easy because of emotional and sensual pressures to abandon the soundest principles and best laid plans. Use your will. Be the king of your realm. Your past has led you here. Your future is yet to be truly determined. You can change that every day. Your being yourself can affect your sekur natur, or the destiny, if you will, your future plans that are divine. And you can change that at any moment, and any day, and every day. And you and your will combined with those around you and who influence you and who love you and want you with them, that is what will encourage your will to create more magic than you've ever done before. So know that your past should be exactly as it is, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't bring you where you are today, and today is a great place to be. Alright, here we have Hiru and the Indus Kush equivalent. I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong. Bhuvaneshwari. That is spelled B as in boy, H-U-V is in Victor, A, N is in Nancy, E, S, H is in Harry, V is in Victory, A, R, I. The sphere here is the sixth sphere. The planet here is the sun. The day correlating is Sunday. Colors here are red and white. If you notice you're feeling the red and white, or just naturally going or being attracted to red and white, this is a Hiru connection here. The gems are ruby and garnet. You might have connections to these things or not, but I'm going to mention them anyways. Esoteric herbalism, baths, poplar leaves, potasio, coxcomb, geranium, bay leaves, rampe zarague, ropium odorta, vencedor. The oils are olibanum and geranium. The incense here is frankincense, olibanum. The hekal, or the words of power, the mantras. The spiritual aspect is Hrim, and the planetary is Ong, Hreng, Hring, Hrong. The spiritual direction is west. The mundane direction is northeast. The personality portfolio, through its action on the kaibit, or the animal spirit, the hot and dry energy of the sun has the following effects on the personality. And I just like to say that when it says the hot and dry energy, it's talking about like the fire or the predator type of energy. The positive emotional traits are magnanimous, desirous of power and leadership, full of vitality, hence strong-willed, zealous, noble, lofty, proud, ardent, authoritative, humane, reserved, above using underhanded means in the struggle against opponents. The negative aspects, when you're not aligned or doing good, is arrogant, extravagant, indecisive, overbearing, dictatorial, excessive pride, devitalized, hence weak-willed, tyrannical, boastful yet empty, egotistical. The mental traits associated is the will, or circumspection, which means knowing how to avoid distress, and insight. The social correspondences, as far as careers or functions go, are people in authoritative positions, a father or mother or one parent in a household, a king, prince, leaders, lieutenant, deputy, mayor, governor, boss, supervisor, and so on, and self-employment. Spiritual portfolio, the will, the menob, the determinant of character, the crossroads, the transitions, changes, transcending, the essence of our divinity. The spiritual function here is that the will is the essence of our divinity. In the same manner that we help children develop by allowing them freedom to act within a circle of limitations, the Supreme Being develops man's divinity by allowing him a certain amount of freedom within a ring pass not. The circle that man cannot pass corresponds to Sakura structural lines that keep the world and its events in place. Outside of these, man has the freedom to choose what he wills, but as we have seen, success depends on law and order. As Tahuti and Mahat corresponds to the communication of the divine law to our mind and not its imposition, we have the freedom to follow or ignore it. This freedom of the will to follow or ignore divine law is the basis of our divinity. There is no divinity where there is compulsion. We saw in past chapters that the Menob system of meditation is the means of liberating and perfecting the use of the will. On our perfection of the system depends the upliftment of our character and our spiritual growth. The only time that spiritual growth and the transcending of our conditionings takes place is when we live truth of our free will in crossroads situations. These situations are characterized by 1. The appearance that we will lose a great deal, real, imagined, or perceived, which will be opposed to 2. The truth which must be followed, and 3. The intuition of clever and seemingly convincing rationalizations for not following the truth. This latter is contributed by Set. So there is a correspondence here. You did bring up the Sebek card on the other end of the spectrum. So I'd just like to bring out, before bringing that card into the circumstance, though reading that small relation here, Kahiru and Sebek, it says that where there is no wisdom from Tahuti to guide our will, we are victims of our opinions. So, essentially that guidance, a big supporting reason of why you need somebody else is this other aspect of yourself. It needs more input than just what you have in your own expertise as the master that you are and will become. The key phrases associated here with the Hiru card is the effort, the urge to rise to prominence, to be independent, the urge to freedom, by cultivating expertise in Minab, by being self-reliant and confident. A negative aspect is hoping to be compelled to do the correct thing. Ignorance of the will's freedom from emotional compulsion. Ignorance of the will's dependence on wisdom. The lack of Minab due to arrogance or anger or impatience. Which is a strong life force, really meaning weak. Through leadership, the urge to lead. Biological correspondences on the physiological level is that the sun corresponds to the vital energy that is the basis of our constitution, or our overall ability to resist illness and heal ourselves, as well as the gauge of the spiritual force that is required for us to carry out our will. It is also the principle governing our cardiovascular system, especially the heart. The pathology here is cardiac problems, arterial circulatory problems, sthenic but not too high fevers. The comedic therapeutics is cardiac, alterative, constitutional, homeopathic remedies regardless of organ affinity, tonics. Chinese medicine is heart/small intestine system, heat and fire disease pattern detoxify and drain fire and enrich in yin. The Coptis detoxifying formula, heart draining formula, great yin supplementation pills, etc. The spiritual counsel associated here is that when you receive a Hiru reading, you are being reminded to perfect and utilize your Minab meditation skill, as Hiru could only defeat Set through the wise counsel of Tahuti and through adhering to the law of Mahat. You are advised to seek counsel from someone in an authoritative or leadership position. If you are the head person, then make sure to consult the oracle and see a sage or master of the subject at hand. From another perspective, you might be counseled to remember that power is not an attribute of the will. Whatever you are not in the habit of performing or are just setting out to achieve must be impressed upon your life force through mediumistic trance, perhaps through Hegel, the words of power, and nourished through enjoyable visualizations. And of course, the waking trance aspect there. So that's all on the Hiru card, and now we can move forward to how these cards are connected to on the other side with Anpu. But before we move on, I'd just like to point out that all of these aspects that we've just went over, and I'd really like to give a good aspect of a refresher here, though I am a bit tired and want to progress, if you will. But all of these aspects that we've thus read about, for the exception of the Warrior of the Swords, of that starting out position, all of these aspects support Hiru and support your will. Every single card, every single aspect support Hiru and your will. The hearts, the Buddha cards, the everything so far that we've went over supports all that we just went over. Your will and your ability to essentially create magic beyond what people normally think you have to do for it. I'd like to go to the Warrior of Swords as one little last point before we move on to the association with Anpu and the cards supporting that aspect. And the Warrior of Swords here, as it was upside down, that's how your will or your Hiru has been influenced. Is through missed opportunities, restless, out of control, impulsive, disloyalty, lack of results, inconsistency, feeble footing. And it's not saying that you have these negative traits, though you may have very well suffered these negative traits because of a lack of your Hiru aspect. Though, if you get all of these traits of yourself in line, if you use that midnight meditation level, if you adjust and correct your breathing, and you get all of this in focus and in line, you'll flip this Warrior of Swords correct side up, which will relate ambitious, assertive, quick thinking, direct, action-focused, risk-taker, soldier, quick-witted, dedication, sense of purpose, steadfastness, solid footing, and you'll be able to follow through with your will, and you'll be able to create miracles like none other, because you have the support of others, because you're receiving the wisdom from Tahuti, because you know the law and are operating with divine law of Mahat. And so really, you are a living oracle, right now a shaman initiate, though you have much to grow to and attain to. And that's not to put on any pressure or anything, but that's saying the opportunities before you are immense in your ability to manifest reality, not just around you, but around the world and everyone in the community and further. Very awesome stuff. We'll move on further to the Anpu side. So, before we move on to the Sebek card and the cards associated on that end over there, I'd like to just state that there was a particular bone in my pouch that had jumped upon the Six of Leaves card, and so in my interpretation of following this omen and its meaning of it, the Six of Leaves card indicates progress and movement, and it invites you to avoid pointless efforts, essentially. Now, in my interpretation of this, it brings it to another meaning. It doesn't bring this card to another meaning, but it brings this additional meaning. It says persistent worries, obsessions, nightmares. It says your judgment clouded, or otherwise confused. So I would like to bring out that this confusion, nightmares, of course, we have a relation that we've talked on the subject. Confusion, there is bad advice you've been receiving. I'm not saying from who, I'm not saying I know from who, I don't. But I'm saying that there is some advice that you have received along your path, along your journey of life, and you've been applying it, and it's really been spelling a bad recipe for you in particular elements of your life. And so this is a good time to look back and revise the people that have given you advice, their behaviors, and what they themselves have been sowing and doing. And you might want to change some behaviors based upon of advice people gave you that perhaps weren't good people. And they gave you something that sounded good and still kind of seems good, but there's flaws in it. And so if we need help bringing out this information, I can certainly help you do that. We can talk about this on another occasion. Though just at the moment, that's what jumps into me to communicate and get that expressed. Thank you. Love you. So, now we're moving on to the Anpu, or the Sebek side of things. And over here we have an element of metal upon a card. So, I'm going to go bring out a little bit of a meaning regarding that here. So on the mental aspect, on the positive aspects, we have determination, flair for speaking, being self-assured, powerful and energized disposition, a self-made person. Aspects that need some transformation can be stubborn attitude, not always being reasonable and using common sense. A message from the path of evolution means lighten up and think about what others have to say. You will not lose strength, but only gain respect from others for listening to both sides. So we're going to combine that concept to the Komo Kuten card here, which the mantra is Om Virupaksa Nagahari Pataye Svaha, means protector of the West with eyes to see the true nature of all. In his hand he holds paper, and in his other hand he holds a brush. Says, let the quiet flame of passion burn brightly. Don't let past failures take hold of you. Fortune in realizing your errors, and write down your thoughts. And so I'm going to say, and not only your errors, but errors of others as well. These errors of others you may have followed. And so in essence is as in that, so fortune in realizing your own ways and writing down your thoughts. The wisdom from Buddha here, it says inside you right now, the flame of passion is quietly burning. You may, for some reason, be hesitant to let it burn brightly. However, before the eyes which see the true nature of all things, you will come to find the reason you're hesitating on your own. Perhaps you remember past failures, but you should know that you're lucky for realizing the error of your ways. Use the failures of the past to better your future. To help you understand, it might be a good idea to observe your surroundings closely and write down what you see. A deeper look here talks about Komo Kuten is that he is one of the four heavenly kings and a deity who protects the West. Of his messengers, he has a dragon whose power lies in his eyes, as well as a demon that the souls of those who die suddenly, without having been given rights, are said to become. He is a general who serves Tashakuten, the protector god of the Buddhist way. He is said to have the best eyesight of the four heavenly kings, Komoku, meaning wide eyes. As such, he not only protects humanity, but reports to Teshukuten. This is why he is the only one of the four heavenly kings who holds a brush and a paper as opposed to a weapon. The blessings here is protection, improvement in penmanship, and calligraphy. And so this is very, very good in the aspect of documenting. Document the positive aspects of your personality. Document the stages of your transformation. Note how the stubborn attitude will create blockades, but your determination and allowing yourself to speak, being self-assured, is certainly going to help you realize your errors. It's going to help bring out the thoughts of others which you can consider and see in yourself. And therefore, in this is an aspect to this select portion of yourself. The next card I'm going to bring up that surrounds Sebek here is the King of Ankhs, and Ankhs representing life. So another King card on this side says, great Heru Djoser, divine of body, servant of Khnum, builder of wonders, and ender of famines. The grand Nile rises at your command. The land leaps in celebration at your approach. Djoser was the first pharaoh of the Third Dynasty and founder of the Old Kingdom epoch. He is best known for his pyramid, the first step pyramid of ancient Egypt, designed by his advisor, the polymath Imhotep. He is also known for ending the 7-year famine which ravaged the kingdom by rebuilding the Temple of Khnum, thus reinstating the spiritual connection between his people and the life-giving powers of the Nile. The King of Ankhs is compassionate in enforcing his authority. He rides the royal barge, blessing the turbulent yet life-giving waters of the great Nile with his right hand, while holding the Ankh, symbol of life, in his left. His gaze is fixed ahead on the future. The pyramid of Djoser stands in the background, built by loyal subjects. It stands as a testament to what can be built on a strong and stable emotional foundation. In this right-hand position, upright position, it brings out emotionally mature, affectionate, calm, caring, compassionate, loyal, faithful, diplomatic. The upright position is vision of the future, power of the subconscious, and lasting relationships. And right now I'm picking up that this is more of your female, your matriarchal self, with the Sebek side, with the Anpu side, versus Heru, which you're more disconnected with, which is your masculine side. So a birthing to your masculinity into the effectiveness of who you are today and who you will become tomorrow is one thing that you're going through. So next we're moving to a Queen of Scarabs card, bringing, it is in the upside down position. And the Queen of Scarabs brings out the great queen whom Akhenaten loves, the lady of the two lands, Nefer-Neferu Aten-Nefertiti, living forever. Nefer-Neferu Nefertiti's name means the beautiful woman has come. Her many titles include hereditary princess, great of praises, great king's wife, lady of all women, and mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt, among others. She brought stability to Egypt during a time of religious and cultural upheaval, when her husband Akhenaten outlawed the old religions and tried to force the kingdom to observe his monotheistic Aten-based faith. The Queen of Scarabs sits on a throne in a lush garden near a small pond. Her throne is decorated with carvings of ferns, grapes, and cattle, symbolizing material wealth and pleasure. The lush greenery of ferns and grass sprout all around her, indicative of her connection to nature. Lettuce, considered an ancient Egyptian aphrodisiac and fertility symbol, grows beside her throne. She looks lovingly at a golden scarab, iconic of material wealth and success, which she carefully holds with both hands. In this reversed meaning, it brings out ungrounded, disorganized, chaotic, poverty, mean-spirited, work-home conflict, infertility, disconnected from nature. And so this very much will be that aspect that your memory has had the effects on it that it has had, that the life course that you have been subject to has caused this feminine aspect of yourself to have these negative qualities. Though I'm going to mention that as you bring out the masculine self of the Heru side and portion of the reading, you'll notice that this card itself in your life will flip and have the positive meaning of financial independence, a business person or working parent, prosperity, success, wealth, luxury, fertility, and a connection to nature. And all of those things really have a bond there, and it really starts with your connection to nature. Underneath this card is the confrontation card, saying pick your battles wisely. And so as you're very good at thinking and processing intuitively, being able to see who you're around and whether there's somebody who you actually need to have a conflict with, or who you can actually just walk away from and not worry about their reaction or their interaction with your life. Underneath the Anpu cord, we have the unicorn, which means invite serendipity. So in all these aspects, you can truly trust yourself in being a righteous king that you are, and being able to make good decisions in your will, in your intuitive guidance. And so all of this is under, around, and supporting Anpu here, or the Sebek card. So there was a third meaning to the Komo Kuten card, which had metal on top of it, before I move into the Sebek card, with all of these having a reality, a connection. supporting the Sabet card. So we have Komokuten, which is essentially saying don't let past failures take hold of you. On top of it, on the metal aspect, we have what really jumps out to me is stubborn attitude and not always being reasonable or using your common sense. So much towards the Komokuten card saying write down past failures to make sense of them, hence learn from them. And all of this sits on top of Komokuten here, and the Warrior of Scepters brings out directly, it says, unto King Narmer on his royal throne was presented 120,000 captive enemies, 400,000 cattle, and 1,422,000 goats. The hetch or mace was widely used in combat by the Egyptian military. In royal rituals, it served as a ceremonial scepter, creating a direct liturgical link between the pharaoh and his military. The Narmer mace head, for instance, is a decorative stone mace head documenting the conquest of King Narmer as described at the top of this page. The royal ketch was often found in the tombs of royalty, as well as the rich and nobles. The Warrior of Scepters leaps into the fray, preparing to attack his enemy. His energy and enthusiasm are on full display as he kicks up the desert sands under his feet. He is impulsively ready for action. The obelisk in the distance represents the power and raw strength of this warrior. Now in this upright position, it brings out hastiness, energy, adventurous, passion, bravery, inspired action, rebellious, impulsive, strength, sturdiness, enthusiasm. So if we add hastiness to the energy dynamic, the inspired action to what you see around you, you jump into action, and in this action, you are essentially quite stubborn in your determination. And so you're not necessarily reasonable or open to other people's disposition or using common sense on the regular basis. However, with this trio of cards linked, I say trio of cards, 2 cards and metal dynamic linked here, I'm seeing the fact that in your past, this is how you have used these traits in your past, of not having the appropriate person to fuel your will, giving you false information and leading you on a path of action in which you thought was your own, but you were actually manipulated into these things. And so in this, it's saying, look down at your past, write down your thoughts on all of these aspects that you have done so that you can see the true nature of all things. And then this hastiness, if you will, this warrior spirit to be able to have strength, to be sturdy and enthusiastic, rebellious. And when I say rebellious, I mean rebellious for love, for the good in life, rebellious against the powers that be, so as to strengthen the weakened. Because you cannot strengthen others if you have not found out how to strengthen yourself. And you cannot cure others if you have not found out how to cure yourself. So in writing down your past, your thoughts, when you're realizing your past errors, upon following somebody's discretionary advice, which was truly selfish to their own will, not yours, it took your adventure, your bravery, your passion, your inspired action, and it turned it into a negative cause. Though now, in being aware of your masculine side with the Hiru aspect of yourself, you can align the abilities to learn from those past things and to have all of that done for a very, very, very good purpose and reason that you become and are aware of. And so now we'll go ahead and move on to the Sabet card. Hiru was in correlation to the 6th sphere. Anpu is in correlation to the 8th sphere here. It goes on and brings out, it says, the eighth sphere of the tree of life is the exact opposite of the seventh. While the latter coordinates parts to build wholes, the eighth sphere separates wholes into their parts. To illustrate, the seventh sphere takes the different components of language, nouns, verbs, adjectives, and so on, and assembles them into meaningful units such as sentences and paragraphs and stories. Oppositely, the eighth sphere will focus on each component, the nouns, the verbs, and so on, in isolation from each other and the whole, in order to study some aspect of them, the definition, the parts of the speech, etc. While the seventh sphere deals with how each component works with the others to create a workable and meaningful whole, the eighth sphere, here concerning Sebeck, deals with the specific identifying characteristic of each member of a species. These two faculties make very important contributions to the nature of society. The seventh sphere is not only responsible for people's ability to work harmoniously, it recognizes the fact that the creation of complex wholes cannot be achieved without the element of differences between the parts. You can't have a painting with one type of shape and one color, or a musical composition with one type of tone and one type of rhythm. In the same way, the world requires the vast diversity of ethnic and cultural elements in order to achieve prosperity. On the other hand, the eighth sphere focuses on the external and superficial differences between people, the racial or ethnic, sex, age, and so forth, and things, and segregates them accordingly. Although there is a legitimate function for the segregative thinking of the eighth sphere, we will see that due to the lack of input into people's thinking from the higher faculties, spheres is 6 to 0, the eighth sphere is the chief architect of man's social ills. The eighth sphere corresponds to man's ability to give concrete verbal form to his feelings, beliefs, and knowledge. It is our faculty for separating things from each other and parts from the whole to which they belong, through the act of defining, describing, and naming. We saw earlier how this faculty, due to its inability to perceive the abstract relations between things and parts and their whole, creates such false concrete categories as medicines and poisons. If studies were to be conducted on this premise, they will show that Western education is predominantly a process of providing definitions, descriptions, and names. The problem is aggravated by the fact that besides the creation of false distinctions, it thus deludes the person into believing in the existence of things that don't exist. Ergo, once we understand the above, we will understand that poisons and medicines do not exist. We are forced to think relationally. This is the reason, for example, why Western societies which function predominantly through the eighth sphere, the lower portion of the left side of the brain, cannot conceive of a female pope, a female rabbi, and are obsessed with segregation in all things. Not only are differences made between the sexes, races, and nationalities, but in the sciences as well. Until the 1950s, psychiatrists knew virtually nothing about the physiology and biochemistry of the brain. Physicians to this day know virtually nothing about nutrition and so on. They cannot help confusing the exclusiveness of the definitions of healing and nurturing with the actual healing and nurturing processes themselves, which are never nor cannot ever be separated from each other. The seventh sphere, and next portion. This is getting back to that Aussorian metaphorian portion. And as we come into here, we have Hiru is able to defeat Set with Tahuti's assistance. At this stage, the will is guided by the wisdom of Tahuti through meditation, counsel from sages and oracles, which, as we learned, is the will of God, or you could say of Brahman, if I'm saying that correctly. Hiru is able to defeat Set with Tahuti's assistance. At this stage, moral and legal values are wedded to serve as a basis for adjudicating the international and social conflicts in the world. The blatancy of the hypocrisy of the conquerors will be a major factor in the resolution of these conflicts, as they will be shown to be in constant violation of the very laws that they propose for others. For this to take place, there must be a philosophical and moral restructuring of the United Nations. The oracles, the Ifa, Matuna Tur, the I Ching, the Delugun, will play a major background role in the restructuring of the philosophical principles that will dominate in scholarly, religious, and governmental circles. Moving forward, we have level 1, stage 2 of initiation, the Sahu division of the spirit, sphere 8, Sebek. At this stage, the teacher provides the initiate with a new set of definitions, descriptions, and explanations for what is life, what are emotions, etc. In short, the teacher redefines the basic ideas operating in the life of the student. Before this, all of the individual's beliefs are based on the identification with the person. We have already seen that up to this point the individual has been victimized by the host of illusions, segregative thinking, and rationalizations of emotions due to the operation of the lower faculties making up the person. Now his beliefs must be redefined using the Alsaurian self-identity as their basis. The reshaping of one's belief system in light of the identification with the indwelling intelligence that is at the center of all our mental and bodily processes is called the opening of the way. It is important to understand that in reality we don't learn how to grow spiritually, we learn how to remove the impediments to the coming to the foreground of our submerged divine self. An example: wrong ideas close the door to the full operation of the self in the life of the individual. One cannot overstate the fact that the indwelling intelligence was not intended to be limited to operating your background mental process and involuntary bodily functions, and as it is omniscient, it cannot be taught. The reformed Sebekian faculty, reflecting rationalizations based on one's true self, the All-Sought, is called Apuat, the opener of the way. The way is a symbol for our beliefs and ideas as conduits of the course of our lives. As we believe, so we act. As we act, so goes our destiny, our Seker Natur, our divine plan. According to our rationalizing our actions, according to our according to our unreformed Sebekian faculty, Set, we are in the habit of rationalizing our actions according to our identification with our person. We would, for example, firmly believe that we could not help doing so, and so because of the way we felt, the emotional influence, or didn't feel, etc. Can you imagine the indwelling self running the body according to the whims and feelings? Surely its functions must be based on divine law and order, Mahat, the fourth sphere. This process of redefining the belief system of the student is made very difficult by the use of our everyday language. Most African societies of initiates possess secret languages for such purposes. the book and the PDF that I gave to another you're connected with, certainly they can give you access to this language that I've written, which will help in being able to process a lot that you've been going through, and according to the secret language that we're referencing in the book, but in a modern tone, in a modern twist, but still that secret language being utilized is very important for you. One of the reasons for this is that such languages create order, such secret languages create order in the thinking of the person through their semantical structures. We get glimpses of this in some of the South African languages in which the categorical word for God, Muntu, is the same for man. As a result of using such languages for our thinking, we are able, without conscious effort, a very important principle, to keep in our awareness the facts of our true nature. If your language constantly reminds you that yourself shares the same qualities as I term God to be the Erd Netranum Deva Kamiel, by using the same term for both, if it reminds you of the difference between being informed and knowing, by using clearly distinct terms for each, it facilitates the process of spiritual development. If we use our everyday language, we have to rely on personal definitions of the terms that we use. I have found it necessary in this book to establish such special usages of terms like person for the lower part of the being, spheres 7 to 10, and self for the higher part of the being, 0 to 3, the spheres, and so on. Another benefit of such languages is to be found in their close relationship to the language of words of power. These languages use many devices, some of which are known as Gematria, Notarikon, Temura, and so forth, in order to hide the words of power in the body of other words and to serve as a phonemic device to the initiate. Take, for example, the name of the deity of wisdom, Tahuti. It conceals the mantra Hu. The Kemetic cosmology states that the Netranum Deva Kamiel of the senses is Hu. Now it is well known that the highest goals of meditation cannot be achieved unless thinking is stilled. So this Hekal, this word of power, is used to quiet the senses as their operation stimulates thought activity. This fact will consistently remind the initiate that wisdom is achieved by stilling the thinking process to enable our omniscient to come to the foreground. Omniscience to come to the foreground. Similarly, the Kemetic phrase for I am is Anuk, which is a transposition of the Hekal Onk or Ong. Each and every time that the Kemetic initiate says I am, he is reminded that this I am is the same qualitatively as the Supreme Being. Although the classical Latin and Greek that are used for saying Mass lack the same degree of cognancy and have no relation to words of power, it is on the basis of these principles that the Catholic Church has reserved them for their Masses and litanies. So that's actually a very good aspect, that you haven't got involved with such things in the past, so you haven't developed bad habits with secrets that they've kept from you. So you're really an open book to be able to receive such truths that we're reading from this book. And here we'll continue in just a moment. So continuing on, it says, in the same manner that mediumistic or hypnotic trance was used in the preceding stage to reestablish the proper self-identity, so must it be used to establish these new definitions as operatives in the spirit or the mind of the individual. Comprehending them is not enough. This is why people find themselves doing things that they are convinced they should not do. It is why the mere reading of scriptures and hearing of sermons is not enough to do much to alter people's behavior. The inculcation of this new set of values into the spirit serves additional functions. Ideas and beliefs only have power to influence our lives when they have been charged with emotional force. Expertise in meditation will reveal that emotions are primarily states of mediumistic trance. In this state, independent thinking and the will are to a large degree paralyzed, and consciousness is withdrawn from the external plane. The idea or image in the sphere of awareness becomes the reality of the moment. That is why people who in reality know better cannot at the moment of a powerful emotion rescue themselves. Why do some people lose control at the sight of a picture of a serpent, a spider, or so on? Why do most people lose their common sense during emotional moments? How about the profusion of wise thoughts that visit you only when you are dealing with other people's problems? The mediumistic trance, of which emotions represent a variety, is able to the state of dreaming and death. And the guide of our behavior at such times is the idea of belief. And the guide of our behavior at such times is the idea or belief associated with the emotional complex. For example, what we call anger is a negative mediumistic trance in which the guiding factor is the image of our person carrying out some antisocial act, perhaps the idea that we are angry, or so on. These negative thought or energy complexes are symbolized as Set, the Alpep in the Comedian tradition. The positive thoughts, the rationalizations of our actions based on our identity with Asad, are symbolized by the deity Anpu or Anubis, the guide of the dead. An example, it corresponds to the positive thoughts that must guide us when we are in the grips of an emotion, since the will and independent thinking will be done by degrees paralyzed, according to the strength of the emotion. Our only guide at such moments are the thoughts reprogrammed into our behavioral patterns. Once the work of this stage of initiation is completed, which takes place at the 8th stage, Sphere 2, Tahuti, the initiate will be impervious to the visitation of any emotion, craving, or temptation. This is why it is said that Anpu, or Anubis, which is in direct correlation to the Sabet card here, is the embalmer of Asad. An example, he renders him incorruptible. During the 4th stage of initiation, we will see how this process truly unfolds. And I want to say that as this was, on a technicality, a cooperative reading, that this last portion that was brought out is very much connected through y'all's relationship and being able to have full communication of a situation happening here, communicated to the other, and then the intuition can come in. There's not any emotional connection to the situation, so a clear guided answer can come through the mind, through Tahuti, through that wisdom, unemotionally made, communicated back, and then that decision, that action can be carried out. And so through the combination, do you hold the ability to correctly interpret and go by the guide of the devas or the deities or the Netranuman Devakamiel, and so forth and so on. Here, the level 1 of the meditation process, stage 2, sphere 8. The first set of meditations aims at positioning Asad as the foundation of the reasons that we give ourselves for our beliefs, ways of feeling and acting. People are in the habit of basing the rationalizations for their actions on their identification with their persons. In contrast to our indwelling intelligence, which is unconditioned, each person is the embodiment of a set of conditioned behavioral patterns. Fear, anger, sensitivities, shyness, failures, likes, dislikes, and other shaping factors of personalities serve to limit an individual's ability to achieve his or her goals. not just simply from the fact that emotions can make them act irrationally or paralyze the capacity for action, but more importantly, from the fact that they can interfere with the activity of the indwelling intelligence. This is symbolized as the killing of Asar by Set. We must therefore realize that it is not a simple matter of thinking positively, which must in the long run fail as long as the individual continues to identify themselves with their person, which is in essence limited in its capabilities. A positive thought cannot succeed if it is contradicted by an innate limitation of the personality. We must therefore identify with the free part of ourselves, the indwelling intelligence, in order for our positive thoughts to be successful. The chief meditation of this stage is suggested by the function of one of the deities of the sphere, Anpu or Anubis. He is the embalmer of Asar, as mentioned, and assists in his mummification. In the Seshmatut Natur, embalming and mummification symbolize the incorruptibility of the higher parts of the spirit. The initiate who has elevated his consciousness to this level is beyond the decadent influences of earthly things, which are symbolized by worms. These earthly things, or worms that corrupt us, are the earth-born ideas, the sabal, that we hold about ourselves in life. As we saw, they originate in the left side of the brain, sphere 8 of Sahuman. They are the emotion-based rationalizations that we give ourselves to justify indulging in following our emotions and sensualism. I am only human, so naturally I had to, or couldn't, or so on. I didn't live truth, but I am doing my spiritual work. To overcome this way of thinking, we must thoroughly study and understand the fact that our true self, the Asar, is beyond the influence of emotions. No matter how often and how strongly they reflect themselves in our awareness, we can resist and ignore them. What would happen if you didn't respond as an emotion suggested? Make an honest and determined effort to ignore them the next 10 minutes that they visit you, and you will see that they really don't have power over you. It is for this reason that emotions, the Sabal, are called the children of impotent revolt in the Pertem Hiru, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Most people are controlled by their emotions mainly because they believe that they must follow them, or because they believe that emotions are the validators and justifiers of their actions, as if emotions were signifiers of truth. Most people believe that they cannot do what they don't feel and must do what they feel. All of the ideas of the self's indwelling intelligence's imperviousness to emotions and sensualism must be equated to the depiction of Asar as a mummy. Chant the Heka, Ong Ang, until you are deep in trance. Once in trance, recall a rationalization that you give yourself for indulging in emotion, while seeing yourself unmoved by it. Visualize yourself as the mummy Asar. The objective is for you to get in the habit of reasoning that if you identify with your true self, as opposed to your person, you can never use your emotions as justification of your actions. When we get to stage 4 of the meditation process, we will see how the rationalizing faculty, the 8th sphere, Sebek, helps us to become impervious to temptations. An example, how it embalms us, prevents moral decay. Nefert Ra must reject the belief that she cannot help getting upset by other people's lack of capability. As this fieriness is an intrinsic quality of her personality, the marital or the martial, she cannot become a calm person by simply nourishing positive thoughts to the effect. She must identify with herself, Asar, which is able to manifest any behavior and personality that is required. We will have more to say on this in the 3rd stage. Sehu's belief is that his goal of achieving financial security can only be reached by devoting all of their time to their personal pursuits, will be transcended by their rationalization that as their true self is the same self in others, what they do for others, they do for themselves. Their true self is not bound by time and energy limitations in the accomplishment of its goals. The indwelling intelligence directs thousands of physiological functions at the same time. By identifying with it as our true self, we are able to transcend the limitations of our persons. This identification is the opening of the way. Our rationalizations of what we can and can't do, which are the intrinsic limitations of our personalities, close the way to the working of our indwelling intelligence in the totality of our being. It limits the self to the task of directing the subconscious, mental, and bodily processes. To sum up, the objective of the meditation at this stage is the realization that as our true self is infinite in its potential to know and do, we must never accept any limiting thought regarding the things that we need to accomplish in life. We must always be ready to say, I can, with the understanding that this I is not the complex of capabilities, limitations, and inclinations that we call our personality, though the unconditioned, hence infinitely capable indwelling intelligence of our being, Assad. Next portion we have to read here is that Sebek is the name given to the planet Mercury by the Egyptians during the Greco-Roman time. Earlier it was called Sebku. In astrology, Mercury is styled as the messenger of the Neternumen Devakamiel. This is because it corresponds to the language verbalizing centers, Braka and Rudniki, that are located in the left hemisphere of the cerebrum. We must take note of the fact that all of our other faculties are only able to communicate sensations and images. Verbal thinking is a process of putting into verbal form, informing what is felt, imaged, or already known non-verbally. This will become very clear if you were to practice clipping your thought as soon as they begin to appear. You will realize that even though you suppress the completion of the sentence or paragraph, you are still able to know what the words were going to indicate. This is because the knowledge of what you clothe in thoughts precede the mental verbalization of such knowledge. Sebek translates these nonverbal messages into words. If the names, definitions, and logical activities concerning these nonverbal messages are in harmony with reality, then the way is open for the indwelling intelligence to extend its operations to the outer career, the marriage, or portion or whatnot part of our lives. Otherwise, it is closed. It is important to note that Western psychologists have overrated the value of this faculty, obviously for the fact that it is the foundation of their technological and commerce-oriented culture. Their unqualified statement that it corresponds to language cannot be accepted. To be precise, it corresponds to the verbalizing aspects of language. It does not have the ability to process meaning, that is, to understand which is the function of the right side of the brain, a fact that suggests how and why the left side of the brain is the chief source of mischief in the world. Long before Western scientists even suspected about the dualization of the brain, the Kabbalistical tradition had an extensive knowledge about it. Quoting from the Zohar and the Kabbalah Unveiled, S.L. MacGregor Mathers states that when the inferior man descendeth into this world, like unto the supernal form in himself, there are found two spirits, so that man is formed from two sides, from the right and from the left. with respect unto the right side of the Neshmatha Kodisha, the holy intelligences, with respect unto the left side, the Nepesh Chia, the animal soul. Man sinned and was expanded on the left side, and then they who are formless were expanded also. That is those spirits of matter who received dominion in the inferior paths of the soul of Adam, whence arouse concupiscence, which arouse the desire for sexual intimacy. There are few things that can rival the possession of a great deal of information without understanding. Sebku, Sebek, and Sobek are etymology related to Seb, from whence Seba and Sebal are derived. As Seb, or Geb, is a name for the earth god, Sebek, or Sebku, corresponds to information derived from earthly experiences, from outside of ourself, as opposed to the spiritually intuited wisdom. We also have Sba, to educate, Sba, school, Sbat, pupils, and Spy, teacher. Sebek is the faculty that enables us to separate and label parts of a whole, or members of a group on the basis of their external differences. Without this faculty, we would look at an event or thing and not be able to distinguish its parts or phases. Yet, because of it, we segregate things and events that belong together into airtight compartments based on their superficial external differences, and thus create a host of problems in the world. This is the source of all the hypocritical acts, contradictions, and the failure to transfer what is learned in a situation to analogous situations. The segregating function of Sebek is chiefly supported by the verbal functions of language, definitions, descriptions, and naming. To define a thing is to explain what it is and is not. An example, to segregate it from other things. Few people know that verbal thinking with its definitions and names is an obstruction to acquiring the knowledge of reality. When most people look at a thing or event, they fail to see what is really there because the Sebek faculty interposes the definitions and formulas that have been fed us via the educational process. Even where the definitions are useful and correct, there is still a process of substituting the symbols representing reality for the reality itself. Thus, to know reality, the thinking process must be stilled. The Sabal, plural of Spa, are therefore all individuals whose lives are determined by earth-born information as opposed to spiritual teachings, and the intuitions from the wisdom faculty, Tahuti. This is why the Sabal were considered the enemies of Ra and Asad. An example, earth-born information closes the way to the development of our life force and our spiritual growth. Before I continue reading, I'd like to bring out how in the Hiru side and a lot of the supporting information that you heavily, your will, that aspect of your abilities heavily relies on someone else, a partner or a family member or somebody who truly loves and cherishes you and is continually reminding you that you're wanted and worthy and around and so forth and so on. Because some part of you knows that is lacking within you. So this other side of you, the Anpu, that can develop, that can mature, and I'll say get better, if you will. Though that's the current state of what you've been at for quite some time. And so you're aware that these earthborn ideas are limiting because you're aware of the information coming through your intuition, which is not born of such. And so relying on someone else makes a lot of sense, and so this is very important to those around you and with you to be able to give their continued support and to trust you. But at the same time as they trust you and give you that information, you need to do the same with them and trust them in their ways. And so to make a blend of their ways and your ways is the combination, is the developing process. And when you, going back to another card, when you, the Komakutin, when you go and you write down the things that are your own erroneous ways, if you will, and you clean up the negative, disharmonizing vibrations, that'll harmonize better throughout as you learn and you clear up those things, and you'll have more harmony around you, allowing Tahuti, allowing the wisdom to come directly to you. But until then, you're learning through the examples of who you can see and who you're aware of, and things that other people are doing. And so this is a part of the process of learning and of your path. Moving on, it makes mention that Sebek corresponds to the side of Sebek as the guardian of the threshold. Sobek symbolized the crocodiles which closed the way to Arabians attempting to smuggle themselves into Kemet. We find the same throughout Africa, where cognate deities like El Gubba and etc. are also the guardians of the entrances of shrines and homes and so forth. And I had mentioned to you, and you may have forgotten, but Akkad, the two lions at the sunrise and the sunset, and they were originally what we're talking about was based upon. Though moving on to what's recorded here, it says, Anpu, called Anubis by the Greek, and Apuat, opener of the way, two aspects of the mercurial principle Sebek, shared the duty of guiding the deceased in the underworld to Mahat's Hall of Justice, where the heart or the will is weighed. The deceased in this case are symbolized of the person undergoing spiritual initiation, as it results in dying to certain things in the world, as well as to the personality. This is why Reformed Christians say that they are born again. The underworld, Duat, Amenta, etc. corresponds to the subconscious, to which the focus of consciousness is transferred during trance. I believe it was someone who asked me recently if I believed in hell, and I said no. I said I believe in the Duat, as the Egyptians did, and their aspect of this is the subconscious aspect, as I'm reading from here in this moment. And truly having the heart weighed doesn't necessarily happen at one's literal physical death. It happens during life, and that's the point, is to get to that point in life and then to move forward, so that as we actually transcend this flesh into the next life, that we do move on into an incarnation of a more so divine form than this earthly human dimensional form, if you will. Finishing out this portion, it makes mention, it says that Anpu and Apuat are depicted as canine-headed men because the faculty of cleverness, among others, that they represent is the dominant trait in dogs, foxes, jackals, and so forth. The ability of canines to learn to respond to a large number of verbal commands is also well known. Things we hold in common there. And so here we're moving on to the philosophical and psychological foundation of the Mutu Natur, the fundamental shaping factors of life and their interrelation and interdependence. Sebek brings out that perhaps the best description of the problems resulting from the use of our syllogistic, logical, intellectual faculty without the guidance of the synthetical faculty, the fourth sphere of the Mahat of law and order, is symbolized by the Hydra of Greek mythology. For every head that was cut off from this monster, two grew in its place. This is the very accurate characterization of the majority of proposed logical solutions, because this faculty can only focus on a part at a time. A proposed solution to a problem creates a number of unforeseen problems in other parts. Such problems are avoided by realizing that we cannot construct wholes from the logical manipulation of species and parts, the Tower of Babel syndrome, that is, and that the syllogistic logical function must be applied only after the whole has been perceived. The perception of concrete wholes is carried out by Het Hiru, the imagination, and the perception of abstract wholes is carried out by Mahat and Tahuti. The last two faculties are the only sources of solutions to specific problems that do not create problems elsewhere. This is the function of wisdom and divine law. The second step in developing ourselves spiritually and promoting our ability to succeed in our undertakings and in life involves the unification of our logical intellect with the divine law. Another aspect here is that the faculty for separating the undertaking into manageable steps, thus easing the way. When the will is negative, we delude ourselves by thinking that we can reverse the process and piece the whole out of steps, and thus arrive at an understanding of the infinite. An unenlightened individual will of Sebek believes that the purpose of his cleverness is to ease the way to his goals at the expense of others. A spiritually enlightened will of Sebek knows that the true purpose of cleverness, what passes for intelligence in the West, and education, knowledge of techniques, details of the steps and process of carrying out a tasks, are for easing the way. An example for the purpose of carrying out tasks with a minimum of effort and time and maximum results. The mundane translation here is the same as the spiritual. In addition, it is the ability to establish the legal connection between sequential units and between parts through their outer form. It is important to keep in mind that the reason for syllogistic or Cartesian logic cannot give insight into the truth of premises is due to the fact that it cannot establish the logical connections between parts and the whole to which they belong, as it only deals with the outer form of things. When you receive this metut in a reading, it may mean that you may have to secure the assistance of specialists and technicians in the field or people of the book. And then in this portion it brings out that you are now ready to seek information, technical details, and so forth regarding each step, phase, and means of carrying out the project. Incidentally, it is from this stage that many people incorrectly start their planning. So now's not a time to plan, now's a time to gather information. And that information is your past. And how do you get that information from your past? Through waking trance. And what's the most immediate non-substance way of achieving that waking trance is through your breathing. And that bringing the stomach up tight, lifting up the chest, and affecting all those portions in your body. And let's see here. Alrighty now, and as we're moving on to this portion, we have Sebek, Apuat, Anpu Sebek. As I mentioned, not in this book, but it relates also back to the two lions. It refers back to the two lions, Akkad, Apuat, and Anpu. In the Indus Kush, this is referring to Matangi. That is M as in Mary, A, T as in Tom, A, N as in Nancy, G, I. The sphere is the 8th sphere, representing the planet Mercury. The day is Wednesday. The color is saffron, also red and black. The number 3 is associated here, and the gems is emerald. The esoteric herbalism baths are Apre, Camino, Arras, con todo, oregano, lavender, larkspur. Oils are lavender and lily of the valley. The incense is lavender and lily of the valley as well. The Hekal, the mantra is the word of power. The spiritual aspect is Ang. The planetary is Ong, Brang, Bring, Brong. I'm going to say that again. Ong, Brang, Bring, Brong. The spiritual direction is northeast. The mundane direction is south. The personal portfolio is that through its action on the Kaibet, the animal spirit, the cool and dry energy, which is of scavengers and non-passive, the earth energy of Mercury makes the personality of Sphere 9. The emotional traits on a positive aspect are sharp and witty, fond of travel, critical in a positive way, able to separate issues based on externals, loquacious, diplomatic, cold and pedantic, syllogistic, logic-minded, highly dependent on information, communicative. On the negative side, we're looking at critical, loquacious, busybody, opinionated, inconsistent in belief, pretending to know, yet ignorant, mischief maker, gossiper, scheming, cunning, argumentative, proud, sly, lying, selfish. The mental traits are segregative thinking, labeling, defining, the verbal clothing of what is known, felt, and perceived, syllogistic logic, imitation. The social correspondences are quick-witted people, good learners from mere observation, even without a teacher. The careers and functions are so-called intellectuals, scholars, academicians, students, teachers, ambassadors, astrologers, mathematicians, clerks, technicians, relatively inexperienced lawyers, preachers, teachers, traders, young men, office workers, printers, schemers, schemes, financial, etc., thieves, journalists, good speakers, diplomats, politicians, and specialists. The spiritual portfolio is in the spiritual function, which brings out that however pragmatic and necessary for the manipulation of physical phenomena, the mastery of definitions, names, and descriptions, the fundamental elements of our education, does not constitute the knowledge of reality. Proceeding with awareness of this limitation will bring us good fortune. Proceeding without awareness of this limitation, misfortune. We speak glibly of the person coming into being in the third month of gestation of life, arising out of the chance coming together of non-living particles, in the same breath that we give better odds to a random assortment of 800,000 words and definitions on index cards being tossed in the air and falling in alphabetical order. And with pride we call ourselves scientists. Key phrases here are disunion due to segregative thinking, through the use of clever tactics, clever words, adroitness, by paying attention to details, pride in one's education, logical ability, verbal ability, litigations, arguments, having the facts, data, being informed. The biological correspondence is Mercury governs the functions of the motor and sensory nerves. The pathology is the neurasthenia, nervous irritability, asthma, bronchitis, stertorous, breathing, neuralgia, speech impediments. The Kemetic therapeutics is nervine and emollient. The Chinese medicine is lung and large intestine system, wind disease patterns. And lastly, we have the combination of these two cards primarily from the oracle system of Metu Neter, of Heru, and Sebek. And these two cards were both on their suits. They were in a positive suit, though you're going to need to put a little bit of extra work into making all of this happen. If you don't, things will continue as they have been in the past. They won't succeed, and you'll continue the same cycle with different people. If you put the work into overturning this Warrior of Swords card, if you become unified with your Hero self, with that will, and you're going to learn this through another that you're with, and in learning this, you'll be able to have, your will be guided by this wisdom all on your own. You won't just be stuck to earthborn ideas. And in another aspect that comes to mind with the Sebek card relating to Anpu is that those that you're with, that's how you see them, and that's how, I don't want to say use them, but that's how they help you, that's how they're an aid to you, that's how you're able to learn from them, and that's why they are a major beneficial use to you on a positive level. No negatives attached to that. And so in this Anpu card, you need to see very specifically what the Spirit is showing you is telling you to be, that you can do. And so in this, they're helping you in this moment to identify with such things, with what you're looking at is just the reflection of what they can do with you by yourself. And when I say by yourself, I mean between you and them. And so getting to the Hero and Sebek combined meaning, we come to that an enlightened individual knows that the true purpose of cleverness, what passes for intelligence in the West, and education, knowledge of techniques, details of the steps and processes of carrying out a task, are for the easing of the way. An enlightened individual knows that the true purpose of cleverness and education are for the easing of the way. An example, for the purpose of carrying out of tasks with the less effort and time and maximum results. An enlightened will and magnanimity combined with attention to details and good logical ability. Successful middle management. Supervisors, decisive actions further. So you have much to grow from, you have much to grow into, and I see overall a very good future. One thing I mentioned on the whole reading was there was a card that jumped out after you had picked out cards, but it jumped onto the table when I was setting them up, and it was the Three of Ankhs. It says on the Three of Ankhs, 3 women dance in celebration while lifting their ankhs high in the air. The ladies wear white and gold clothing and jewelry, indicating success. Now when it jumped up, according to the position of the cards, it was in an upside down fashion, which indicates overindulgence, lack of friends in social life, canceled celebrations, distress of failure, discord, no celebration. So in this context, the overindulgence for legitimate reasons, I'm not saying it caused, but there was a connection to a lack of friends in social life. And so this regularity canceled events that normally would have happened otherwise in your past. And so there's a constant distress of failure and discord and no celebration. Now this is big on the no celebration. That really jumped out to me. I said, I gotta read this. I gotta come back and record this, even though I didn't. Anyways, the start finding things to celebrate. Make things to celebrate. Celebration is important. And when I say celebrate, I mean do something that makes you have a good time. If that means lighting a fire, having a little ceremony, ritual, whatever. If it means singing and dancing, if it means getting your favorite food and enjoying a movie, but that's your celebration little ceremony or whatever it is that you find the purest of enjoyment, find things or create things to celebrate and celebrate them in what you find to be happy. When you get everything in line, when you get the masculine and the feminine parts of yourself in alignment and they're cohesive and they're both in full communication and supporting each other. And you have that Tahuti, you have that wisdom flowing in so that you can trust. You don't have to have the physical reality. You can believe that it's there and you can work with it on a quicker basis, I'll say. You'll flip that Three of Ankhs on the correct side up, just like the Warrior card in the beginning. And the upright position of the Three of Ankhs says celebration, reunion, friendship, gathering, joy, festivities, enjoying success, teamwork, and partying. And one thing I see in this real quick is the times that we've been able to hang out so far. That's what really is. Friendship, boom. Gathering, boom. Joy, boom. Festivities, they've been happening in our own little way. And I mean that in a combined mannerism. Enjoying success are coming together, talking, learning of what's been happening in the past that nobody else could put their finger on and understand. Teamwork, what we've been doing, and partying. We've been enjoying ourselves. And so really that Three of Ankhs is starting to happen for you. And so if it's happening, it means these other elements that have been mentioned in the reading are well underway to reach resolvement so that you can come to your complete empowerment of your abilities, of your intuition, of your connection, of your clairvoyance and clairaudience and all those clear abilities. And so, again, many blessings, and I don't have to wish you good luck. It seems like you have good fortune. You have good Sukkot around you. You have a good divine plan coming about through you, and it's taken all of this misery, all of these experiences of the past to show you, number one, what you don't want in life, and number two, what you will fight tooth and nail to help anyone and everyone from going through what you've experienced. So there's a lot at work, a lot at play, a lot that you have to experience on a positive level. And so that equates into challenge of addressing previous fears, previous patterns of behavior in life that seemed safe, like a good route, though new behaviors being formulated in place and breaking those old patterns of behavior and learning that you have different options and you can believe and trust the intuition coming into yourself, and you can grow stronger with other people around you. Thank you very much for coming over and getting a reading, for choosing the cards, and I was so happy that we could enjoy our time talking, and I was still yet able to do the reading, and now it's available online for yourself to view at any time, to go back on, to re-listen to, and anybody else out there can go ahead and listen and watch and get the advice, because it certainly applies to all of our lives. All of this information, it really does apply. Many of us are very much alike in a lot of the things that we've grown from and the experiences that we have legitimately suffered from in the past. And so I hope this is a healing aspect. I know it's a healing aspect for yourself. I hope it's a healing aspect for many other people to be able to watch it and check this out. So may we continue to grow and get better. May your path before you, as it unfolds, become ever abundant. And when I say that, I mean abundant in memory. One of the worst things we can do is lose our memories and not remember events of our lives, because then it's like we didn't live it. And if we didn't live it, then what did we experience? We didn't grow from anything. We stayed the same. And so you have much to grow from and rapidly with. But when I say that word rapidly, not beyond your pace that is comfortable for you. not something that is without your permission along the way, continually receiving your permission along the way of doing so. So have a wonderful day or night or evening or morning or whatever it is, wherever you are, and I love you and I thank you for being a part of my life and coming and hanging out and allowing this all to happen. Much love and many blessings. And now you can know for a fact that you're a shaman or a shaman initiate, if you want to put it that way. You have spiritual gifts. You create magic. You are a miracle worker. Thank you for joining me on this program, on this episode of Cetra's Angelhood. My name is Sir Christopher, and I'll love you forever. Whatever gender, race, creed, whatever faith you have, and what you have come to be. You are needed in this world, for your heart of love is a portion of the solution to our species' ongoing evolution. Until next time, I'll await the day to again say, hello, my friend fellow.
And when the day is done, she's still holding on to the place she had when she was making light of you, making love to you. Now she's making light of love untrue. She's still walking every night, pacing streets in the moonlight. Moonshine smile on the young one, moonshine find me to fall upon. Make a path to find the lost one, make a way to watch